Chapter 116. When the flying zombie landed on the ground, just the shockwave alone was enough to send the hunters flying 100 meters away. This caused all the hunters to be shocked. They had never seen such a powerful zombie. Was this a level 10 mutated zombie? Even if it was a level 10 mutated zombie, it would not be able to send the hunters flying with just the shockwave of its landing. More than half of the 5,000 hunters in the hunter group had already arrived at the scene. The rest of the hunters were also rushing over from all parts of the base. When the chief saw the hunters coming, he quickly stopped them. All hunters, don't get close. In the face of such powerful zombies, the hunters were simply sending their heads to their deaths. The flying zombie glanced at all the hunters around it. There was a hint of disdain in its eyes. The next moment, it opened its huge mouth and revealed its sharp fangs. It let out a sharp and ear-piercing roar from its throat. Roar. Accompanied by this roar, shock waves visible to the naked eye suddenly spread out. Bang 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 bang, within a radius of 1,000 meters, all the 300 hunters. Their bodies suddenly exploded one after another. Even the hunters only felt pain all over their bodies, as if they were going to explode at any time. Everyone at the scene was astounded. With a single roar, more than 300 corpse hunters exploded. Even the hunters, although their bodies did not explode, fell to the ground in pain and lost their ability to fight. Even their faces seemed to be distorted. They felt as if their bodies were filled with air. As long as it was filled with a little more, they would explode immediately. The bureau chief struggled to raise his head to look at the flying zombie in extreme fear. He understood in his heart. This was a super mutated zombie. Its strength was far beyond a level 10 mutated zombies. In other words, even if they had level 10 hunters, in front of this super mutated zombie, they could only be killed in seconds. Moreover, the strongest in their base was only a level 5 hunter. As for those with psychokinesis, although their bodies were only equivalent to ordinary humans. But in this wave of sonic attack, they did not explode. It seemed that the super mutated zombie deliberately kept them alive. At this moment, Hao Ren crawled over from the side. He grimaced and said in pain, "Chief, this guy is probably a super mutated zombie. Retreat, tell our brothers to retreat. I'll go install it." In front of such a terrifying existence, no matter how many corpse hunters they had, they would only be sending their heads to their deaths. The bureau chief nodded without any hesitation. "Drag it out for a minute." Then he shouted to everyone, "Retreat! Everyone retreat!" Although he also knew that in front of this super mutant zombie, any retreat was basically useless. But it was better than staying here and waiting to be captured. Hearing this, the corpse hunters hurriedly leaped into the distance. Hao Ren turned around and shouted at the super mutant zombie, "Bastard, fight me one-on-one if you have the guts. Don't do these fancy things." That super mutant zombie seemed to understand his words. He turned around and looked at Hao Ren. At this moment, 60 flying daggers suddenly appeared behind the super mutant zombie without a sound. It went straight to the back of the super mutant zombie's head. Puff, 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 puff. 60 flying knives, without exception, all pierced into the exposed brain of this super mutant zombie. However, this super mutant zombie not only did not fall. Instead, its brain squirmed. The 60 throwing knives were squeezed out again. They fell to the ground with a tinkling sound. The wound on the super mutant zombie's brain was almost healed in the blink of an eye. Then, its right hand suddenly stretched out to the side behind. The entire right arm turned into a sanguisurincus, extending 300 meters in an instant. Puff! It pierced Xianxia's heart fiercely. Then this sanguisurincus was instantly retracted. It dragged Xianxia 300 meters away and came to the front of the super mutant zombie. Seeing this, Hao Ren's eyes were about to pop out. On his forehead, blue veins stood out. He roared out, "Bastard!" Then the entire right arm turned into a huge drill in an instant. The entire drill bit was 100 meters long. The thickest part was 3 meters long. The drill bit rotated rapidly and directly pierced into the chest of the super mutant zombie. Then it rotated for a while. It stirred the chest of the super mutant zombie into a bloody mess. However, the super mutant zombie didn't seem to feel anything at all. Its left arm stretched out. It turned into a Sanguisurincus in an instant, stabbing at Hao Ren from afar. Hao Ren quickly rolled to the side, trying to avoid it. But when the Sanguisurincus was 3 meters away from him, the tip suddenly dispersed and turned into dozens of Sanguisurincus, bursting out. 5 of the Sanguisurincus directly pierced Hao Ren's chest. They brought him back to the side of the super mutant zombie. The super mutant zombie threw the 2 of them on the ground. Flapping its wings, it chased after the other hunters. At this moment, boom, 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 several loud noises were heard in succession. Several shells bombarded the body of the super mutant zombie. The body of the super mutant zombie was suddenly blasted into a bloody mess. However, this mass of flesh and blood quickly wriggled in a very short period of time and soon returned to its original state. The super mutant zombie turned its head to look. It turned out that the head of the base, with more than 10 hunters and more than 10 tanks, was coming over. The super mutant zombie let out a roar from its throat. In an instant, its 2 legs turned into 2 thick Sanguisurincus. Then, these 2 Sanguisurincus drilled into the ground. Under the ground, they divided into more than 10 Sanguisurincus. These more than 10 Sanguisurincus drilled into the more than 10 tanks quickly. Boom, 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 boom. The ground burst open one after another. More than 10 tracks burst out. The next moment, the more than 10 Sanguisurincus drilled under the more than 10 tanks. Suddenly, they jumped out and pierced directly into the tanks. Then, at the top of each Sanguisurincus, thousands of Sanguisurincus suddenly burst out. Chi 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 chi. All the Sanguisurincus easily pierced through the tanks. Looking from the outside, the surface of the tanks was instantly pierced through by thousands of tiny Sanguisurincus. The Sanguisurincus shook, and all the tanks were torn apart. The fragments flew far away. And the Sanguisurincus brought all the hunters in the tanks back to the feet of the super mutant zombie. But for some reason, the Sanguisurincus did not kill these hunters. Every hunter still had a breath of life left in them. However, in each of their eyes, there was incomparable despair. Even hunters like them couldn't handle this super mutated zombie. Then today, the entire base was finished. Just as they had expected, the super mutant zombie had captured all 60 hunters and 30 psychic masters and brought them over. Then, it began to massacre the hunter groups without hunters. Wherever it went, as long as it roared, the hunters would explode one after another. The entire C2 base was in chaos. People screamed, cried, and fled. At this moment, they did not even have time to enter the underground shelter. This day, for all of them, was like the real end of the world. Chapter 117. 117 Promotion. Long Xianxia, the super mutant zombie, rampaged through the base and wreaked havoc. In front of it, all the hunters and hunters in the hunting party were as weak as paper. As for the zombies, patrols, and ordinary soldiers, they could only run away. It destroyed houses and slaughtered humans. In just 5 minutes, the number of humans who died in its hands had reached more than 600. It was like the god of death. Wherever it went, there was only destruction and death. Everyone in the base thought that today was their real end. However, at a certain moment, it seemed to have remembered something. It suddenly turned its head to look at the east. Then, it jumped and returned to the place where the hunters and psychokinesis were. Its right arm turned into a Sanguisurincus. The Sanguisurincus was like a snake. With a puff, it drilled into the body of a hunter. It drilled out of his back and continued to drill into the chest of the second hunter. One by one, it penetrated all the hunters and psychokinesis. Then, it flapped its wings. It flew into the air. And those hunters and psychokinesis were lifted up like more than 100 beads on a string. The super mutant zombie carried the string of human-shaped beads and flew towards the east. It quickly disappeared into the horizon. Base C2. Everyone was extremely terrified. They didn't know why the zombie suddenly left. But they knew that the super mutant zombie could come back at any time. Quick, go to the underground shelter. Someone reminded them. When everyone heard this, they recovered from their grief and fear one after another. They all headed towards the underground shelter. However, the 3 underground shelters could only accommodate 8,000 people. People began to crazily rush towards the entrance of the shelter. They were afraid that they would fall behind and be unable to enter. From time to time, the cries of children could be heard. Some people fell to the ground and couldn't get up at all. The people behind them directly stepped on their backs. The super mutant zombie flew back to the mother nest with the string of more than 100 people. After entering the mother nest, hundreds of Sanguisurincus stretched out from its body. The Sanguisurincus pierced through the bodies of these people. The other end reached the sarcoma at the top of the mother nest. These people were hung upside down under the tumor. It was like drinking fruit juice. Through the Sanguisurincus, the tumor was constantly absorbing the blood of these humans. The frequency of the tumor's heartbeat increased significantly. At the same time, in the dried-up blood pool in the broodmother's nest, they also extended many tentacles made of tiny arms. Large amounts of blood continued to seep out of the tentacles. Gradually, more and more tentacles appeared. More and more blood was flowing out. Blood slowly rose from the dried-up blood pool. As for those humans, they were in extreme pain. The blood in his body slowly flowed out. Their vision gradually blurred. Their blurry eyes were filled with despair. That super mutant zombie looked at all this and seemed to be relieved. The blood pool finally came back to life. The broodmother was finally going to come back to life. However, his gaze was fixed on the collapsed crater in the broodmother's nest. If he couldn't kill the human who dared to destroy the mother nest with his own hands, the anger in his heart would never be quelled. Outside the nest, the mutated zombies saw the sarcoma on the top of the nest begin to move again. Their eyes flashed with excitement. Then, they all prostrated on the ground. If there was no super mutant zombie leader, their nest would really be finished. At the same time, in the dragon's cave, Immortal had been sitting cross-legged, motionless. At a certain moment, he suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes, there was a bright light. His spirit, energy, and spirit were much stronger than before. As his eyes looked around, there was an extraordinary aura. This situation lasted for a full 5 minutes. Only then did he slowly withdraw the aura from his body. From the outside, he was still the Immortal from before. However, if he wanted to, as long as he willed it, Long Wei, which had been cultivated for 6 hours, was released. It could make any creature's heart tremble. At the same time, in Immortal's mind, his attributes had already appeared. Name, Immortal, Level 1 Hunter, Level 1 Long Xianxia, Evolution Direction, Titan Dragon. After leveling up to Level 1 Long Xianxia, not only did his telekinesis far exceed Level 10 psychokinesis. Moreover, it was more violent and domineering than ordinary great psychokinesis. Not to mention other things, just the detection range. Ordinary great psychokinesis could only detect a radius of 10,000 meters. That was 10 kilometers. But Immortal's dragons could directly detect a radius of 50 kilometers. According to ancient sayings, this could detect a radius of 100 miles. And the penetrating power of this dragon's was extremely strong. Even if it was 1,000 meters deep underground, he could actually detect the situation in the nest on the surface. Moreover, as he became a Long Xianxia, he also comprehended a skill. Generally speaking, great psychokinesis did not have a specific skill. It was all based on their understanding of telekinesis and their own comprehension. It could condense telekinesis into a knife, and its sharpness was not inferior to genetic martial arts. It could also condense telekinesis into a giant hammer. Its strength was not inferior to genetic martial arts. And this skill that Immortal comprehended was definitely extremely violent and domineering. At this moment, he moved his mind. He retreated from the dragon's cave. The dragon's cave turned into a small mountain and returned to his palm. He kept the dragon's cave back into the system space. He left the stone cave. Following the dark passage, he walked forward. However, when he walked to the place where he came from, he saw that it had already collapsed. The entire huge crevice was now tightly stuffed with rocks and mud. Not to mention ordinary humans, even hunters would find it difficult to get out. Immortal shook his head slightly. His right arm turned into a dragon claw. Then he waved it forward lightly. An invisible force suddenly shot forward. Whoosh! A huge crack that was more than 50 meters wide suddenly appeared in front of him. He leaped, and with just one step, he was out of the crack. At the same time, in the nest, the mutated zombie was sitting in the blood pool, absorbing the fresh blood. However, at this moment, rumble, the ground trembled violently. The next moment, the place that had already collapsed. Instantly, a huge crack that was more than 50 meters wide appeared. It was as if a huge invisible claw had cut that place open. And it was not over yet. That invisible force continued to fly upwards. Chi! There was only a soft sound. It directly cut the nest into two. And this time, the crack was bigger than the previous one. It was a full 50 meters wide. The sarcomas on top of the nest were cut open by this invisible force. A large amount of blood immediately gushed out. The blood flowed out, and the sarcomas quickly dried up. And those people who were hung upside down fell into the blood pool with a plop. Not only the nest, but even the ground outside the nest was cut open with a huge crack that was 50 meters wide and 1 kilometer long. Those level 10 mutated zombies outside the nest, who were at the edge of the crack, were instantly torn apart by the invisible force. Chapter 118. That was the ground in the nest, including the entire nest. An invisible force instantly tore open a huge fissure that was 50 meters wide. Immortal's figure suddenly jumped out of the crack. Those humans who were hung upside down on the sarcomas also fell into the blood pool. Although they were already on the verge of death, but now that they were free, they all subconsciously crawled to the edge of the blood pool. When the super mutant zombie saw this, it was immediately furious. It looked up to the sky and hissed, roar, hiss. Previously, the nest was destroyed by Immortal once. It took it a lot of effort to repair the nest. But as soon as it was repaired, it was torn apart by this human again. How could this not make it angry? However, this human had been hiding in the underground cave before, and it could not kill this human. But now, this human was courting death and jumped out. Then die. I will use your blood to repair the nest. Thinking of this, it stretched out its right arm out of thin air. Its entire right arm turned into a sanguisurincus. It instantly attacked Immortal. However, when this sanguisurincus hit Immortal, a layer of black scales instantly appeared on the surface of Immortal's body. The sanguisurincus pierced the black scales. Ding! It actually made an ear-piercing sound. The super mutant zombie could not help but be slightly stunned. One must know that its sanguisurincus could easily tear apart a tank. But now it could not pierce through the fragile body of a human? This was simply a joke. At this time, the blood in the blood pool had already flowed along the crack and quickly dried up. In surprise, dozens of large and small sanguisurincus grew on its left arm and body. At the same time, it stabbed towards Immortal. However, when this sanguisurincus came in front of Immortal's entire body was already covered in blood-red scales. On his head, there was a blood-red dragon-shaped helmet. There were more than 10 barbs on the helmet. The dragon's mouth was slightly open, and its eyes were blood-red. It gave off a mysterious, ferocious, and powerful feeling. Seeing this, the super mutant zombie couldn't help but shudder. There was something wrong with this human. It knew very well that hunters were the ones with the strongest bodies among humans. With its strength, even a level 10 hunter could be killed with a single sanguisurincus. However, even though he had unleashed dozens of sanguisurincus at the same time, he was still unable to break through this human's defense. Could it be that this human's strength had surpassed that of a level 10 hunter? It seemed that he had to bring out his full strength. As it thought of this, cracking sounds could be heard from within its body. The bones in his body were rapidly enlarging. His flesh was also constantly being torn apart and reassembled. Crackling sounds came from its entire body. Along with the crackling sounds, its height also continued to increase. 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters. In the end, it reached a height of 100 meters. Its right hand transformed into a bone axe. With a furious roar, he raised the giant axe in his right hand and chopped down at Immortal. Woo! In the air, the giant axe emitted a sound that sounded like the wailing of ghosts. It drew a huge black arc. It was as if it was going to tear the sky and split the earth. Its momentum was as fast as lightning. Its strength was as fierce as thunder. Even the hunters who were more than 200 meters away were shocked when they saw the giant axe swinging down. The ferocious momentum of this axe made them think of the legendary heaven-splitting axe. However, the guy in blood-red armor under the giant axe had no intention of dodging. The next moment, all of them saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Boom! The giant axe hadn't fallen yet. Instead, the ground shook violently. At the same time, a huge pit with a diameter of more than 300 meters and a depth of more than 10 meters appeared on the ground. Around the huge crater, a ferocious shockwave brazenly spread out. Everyone was blown more than 300 meters away. They clearly didn't see anything, but such a huge pit suddenly appeared on the ground. And such a strong shockwave sent them flying. It was as if an invisible meteorite had suddenly smashed here. The 100-meter-tall giant zombie was instantly smashed into meat paste. The meat paste splashed in all directions and splashed around the huge pit. Those humans were naturally not spared. They were all splashed with flesh and blood. This time, the super mutant zombie was completely dead. It could never be restored. All the humans looked at the human in blood-red armor and a ferocious dragon head helmet. They all looked as if they were looking at a god. There were more than 60 hunters and more than 30 psychokinesis. He was easily defeated by that super mutated zombie and was brought back by a blood vine like a stick of candied haw. But now, the super mutant zombie had attacked the human twice in a row. The human didn't even move. How terrifying this kind of defense was. After that, the super mutant zombie became a 100-meter-tall giant zombie. Its full-strength attack seemed to be able to destroy the world. But the human still didn't move. The 100-meter-tall super mutant zombie was directly smashed to death by something. This kind of strength was simply too abnormal. This was not a strength that a human could have at all. Especially those psychokinesis, they were even more shocked. As psychokinesis, they could naturally feel that the super mutant zombie was directly smashed to death by psychokinesis. That psychokinesis was incomparably fierce and domineering. It condensed into a huge meteorite with a diameter of 100 meters and fell from the sky. It smashed the super mutant zombie into meat paste. This was far beyond the understanding of these psychokinesis. But in their understanding, psychokinesis was used to control objects. It was not material at all. It was impossible to condense psychokinesis into a small fist and bombard the enemy. Not to mention condensing into a psychokinesis meteorite with a diameter of 100 meters. Moreover, when the psychokinesis meteorite bombarded, all their psychokinesis was involuntarily compressed back into their bodies. Even they themselves couldn't help but have the urge to worship him. What kind of terrifying psychokinesis was that? In their understanding, that was not a psychokinesis that a human could have at all. Even if their psychokinesis was 100 times or 1,000 times stronger, they couldn't do it at all. Xianxia's black leather coat had been dyed blood red. She looked at the human in the blood-red armor, her beautiful eyes full of shock. She had always thought that as a level 4 psychokinesis, although not a top powerhouse, she was definitely a first-class powerhouse in the world. But compared to this human, what was she? She didn't even deserve to carry his shoes. Hao Ren's eyes were also full of disbelief. This human was truly a pervert. At this time, the base chief climbed out of the blood pool with difficulty. Looking at the human in the blood-red armor, the shock in his heart was no less than that of the psychokinesis. When the invisible meteorite smashed down, it was like an earthquake. Especially when he was less than 20 meters away from the giant meteorite crater. He could clearly feel the power of the invisible meteorite. How could a human be so strong? Chapter 119. Dragon Will Meteorite was a new skill that Immortal had comprehended after advancing to Longtime. According to the system, after a normal psychokinesis advanced to a psychic master, they would be able to comprehend the corresponding abilities based on their understanding of psychokinesis. Some were psychokinesis flying daggers, some were psychokinesis fists, some were psychokinesis binding. These abilities were equivalent to condensing psychokinesis into substance. Although it couldn't be seen, it could be felt. For example, psychokinesis flying daggers couldn't be seen by the human eye. However, they could pierce through iron and stone and were sharper than ordinary flying daggers. However, the power of these abilities formed by psychokinesis wasn't great. After all, it wasn't that easy to condense invisible psychokinesis into substance. However, as a Xianxia, Xi's psychokinesis was dozens or even hundreds of times stronger than ordinary psychic masters. Therefore, his dragon will directly condensed into a dragon will meteor. It crashed down from a height of 10 kilometers. Even a powerful super-mutated zombie was directly killed. Moreover, not only did the super-mutated zombie's body die, but even its cells were swept by the dragon will in an instant and completely lost their vitality. This was also the reason why it couldn't be revived after being smashed into meat paste. The dragon will meteorite was just that ferocious and tyrannical. This was the essence of the dragon will. Shi closed his eyes slightly and recalled the scene of the dragon will meteorite crashing down. He seemed to have comprehended something in his heart. At this moment, a system notification appeared in his mind. Frowny face, this place is a special location. You can sign in again. Shi's heart skipped a beat. Sign in. Sign in successful. Sign in location, virus hive. Sign in reward, hive consciousness, virus clone, 1 ancient map. Another map? Shi said in his mind. With a thought, he probed into the system backpack and carefully checked the map. It was still an ancient map drawn on a piece of leather. On the map, the rivers and mountains of Wuxia were still marked. However, this map was obviously not as detailed as the previous one. Some rivers and mountains didn't even have standard names. On the map, 2 places were marked in bright red. Beside them were 2 traditional Chinese characters written in clerical script. Dragon Ruins. Shi's heart skipped a beat when he saw the 2 dragon ruins. His harvest in the dragon ruins this time was beyond his imagination. Therefore, when he saw the 2 words, Draconic Ruins, it was as if he had seen his girlfriend. But then he frowned slightly. Based on the rough location of the 2 dragon ruins on the map, one was in Gui province while the other was in Xan province. However, there were no specific locations marked on them. The terrain near the dragon ruins was also a little blurry. If he wanted to use these 2 maps, he would have to go to those 2 places to search for the dragon ruins. That would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Shi couldn't help but complain in his heart. System, are you trying to increase the difficulty for me? The system was silent and did not respond. Shi shook his head and ignored him. Let's talk about it later. Then, he checked the skill description in his mind. Hive consciousness. Every virus hive has its own consciousness. The consciousness of all the mother nests in the world could be connected. The broodmother's consciousness can connect to any broodmother's consciousness and obtain information about the broodmother's surroundings. Shi rejoiced in his heart. This skill was crazy. As he thought about it, he activated the broodmother's consciousness. The next moment, he could feel the broodmother's consciousness. The broodmother's consciousness was not as clear and changeable as a human's consciousness. The broodmother's consciousness was chaotic, but very simple. From the broodmother's consciousness, he could feel every zombie and mutated beast within 100 kilometers. At the same time, he tried to connect to other broodmothers through the broodmother's consciousness. Soon, his consciousness seemed to have reached the location of all the virus hives in the world in an instant. He could clearly feel the situation within 100 kilometers around all the virus hives. He could feel how many infected bodies were around them. He could know the strength of these infected bodies. In the entire Wuxia, there were a total of 10 virus hives. Around these 10 virus hives, there were a total of 3 super-mutated zombies. 1 was level 3, and 2 were level 2. This made Shi secretly happy in his heart. Although he was only a level 1 hunter, with the bonus of dragon will, dealing with a level 2 super mutated zombie shouldn't be a problem. As for the level 3 super mutated zombie, although he might not be able to defeat it, he had the small success of Dragon Shadow Step. If it wanted to kill him, it was basically impossible. So, in the entire Wuxia, wouldn't he be invincible soon? As long as he continued to sign in for a while, he would level up by 1 or 2 levels. Then in the entire Wuxia, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. After so many years, he was finally going to make it. This made Immortal's mood very good. However, there was a coincidence that among the 3 super mutated zombies, one was in Xan province, and the other was in Gui province. It just so happened that the 2 provinces marked on the map had the dragon ruins. Sure enough, the system really wanted to increase the difficulty for him. However, with the sign-in system, this was not a problem. He withdrew his consciousness from the virus hive. Then he looked at the description of another skill. Virus clone. Expel a part of the virus X from the body and create a clone. Immortal had injected the virus X enhancer before, so his body naturally carried the virus X. According to the description of the system, he could use Dragon Will to expel a part of the virus X from the body. This part of the virus X carried Immortal's genes. Under the stimulation of Dragon Will, its activity was greatly enhanced. It would continue to divide. In the end, it would form a clone that was exactly the same as Immortal's original body. Of course, such a clone only had a body and no consciousness. However, Immortal could separate a strand of his Dragon Will and inject it into this clone. In this way, he could create a clone with consciousness. This clone, although not as strong as him, but it could also reach level 10 psychokinesis and level 10 hunter. Among humans, it was also an invincible existence. This skill would definitely come in handy at certain times. After reading the skill description, he turned his attention to the outside world. Although the virus hive was damaged, it was not dead. If this virus hive was not eliminated, it would not be long before other mutated zombies would repair it again. And with the virus hive, he could continuously create more strong mutated zombies, and even super mutated zombies. Then there would be no end to it. Thinking of this, Immortal's violent and domineering dragon will suddenly spread out. Like an invisible shock wave, it rushed towards the surroundings. Boom! The entire blood-red hive, under this shock wave, suddenly turned into pieces of debris, flying in all directions, flying a few kilometers away. Only then did they all fall to the ground. Those humans who saw this were all stunned. One must know that the hive was built on the entire huge stadium. Without even moving, the shockwave formed by his psychokinesis alone was enough to disperse the entire huge stadium. And the debris flew a few kilometers away. Was this still a human? Those psychokinesis were so shocked that they even forgot to breathe. Compared to this human, their psychic power was simply trash. It was not targeted at anyone, but all of their psychokinesis psychic power was trash. Chapter 120. Immortal didn't bother with the hunters and psychics after he was done with his task. Instead, he turned around. He took a step forward and his figure disappeared instantly. Only 100-meter tall and 300-meter long dragon shadow was left on the spot. All the hunters and psychics present were shocked when they saw the giant dragon silhouette. This is... dragon? Oh my god, this... All the humans widened their eyes and opened their mouths slightly. In addition to the shock, they couldn't help but have the urge to worship. Some of the more timid ones didn't even dare to look up. Since ancient times, the dragon had been a symbol of mystery and power. Even if it was just a dragon shadow, it still made these humans feel terrified and uneasy. Until a few minutes later, the dragon shadow slowly disappeared. The base leader was the first to react. Such a powerful human, could it be the mysterious elite in the base? But this was too powerful. After a while, he shook his head and said with difficulty, He saved us. We didn't even have time to thank him. Everyone heard this and felt regretful. The mysterious elite saved all of their lives, but they didn't even say a word of thanks. They shouldn't have. But they couldn't be blamed. The scene just now was too shocking for them. They were so shocked that they forgot everything else. At the same time, Immortal had already arrived 10 kilometers away. After the initial success of the Dragon Shadow steps, one step could cover 10 kilometers. This feeling of moving like the wind and lightning was really good. As for the gratitude of the humans, he didn't expect it. He didn't want to save them in the first place. He just wanted to kill the super mutated zombie. After living in the apocalypse for so many years, Immortal had already seen through human nature. Saving others didn't mean that they would be grateful to you. Most people would do anything in order to survive. Maybe if you saved them today, they would kill you tomorrow for a bottle of water. In the apocalypse, survival was the most important thing. As for the rest, it didn't matter. If he had to say who he wanted to save just now, it would be Hao Ren. Previously, when strong mutant zombies came to capture people in the base, Hao Ren came to find him first after he came back. Therefore, this time he saved Hao Ren's life, so they were even. However, Immortal had some doubts in his heart. Those humans had clearly been stabbed in the chest by the super mutant zombies. Logically speaking, they should have been infected by the virus and mutated. But when he used the blood demon's eye to look at them, they were all fine. There was no corpse aura on his body. Moreover, in their species column, it also showed human. This was very strange. This was also the reason why he did not kill them on the spot. A moment later, he shook his head. Following the principle of not thinking about it if he couldn't figure it out, he emptied his mind. He quickly ran towards base C2. This place was 150 kilometers away from base C2. However, after reaching the small success stage of the Dragon Shadow step, such a long distance only took Immortal 15 steps. However, it was strange that when one's speed exceeded the speed of sound, one would encounter a sound barrier. When breaking through the sound barrier, there would be a sonic boom. For example, when a supersonic plane broke through the sound barrier, there would be a sonic boom behind it. However, when Immortal used the Dragon Shadow step, he did not seem to encounter any problems with the sound barrier. Nor did there be any sonic boom. Half a minute later, he was already not far away from base C2. His dragon's sight swept across the base. He discovered that in the base, countless houses had collapsed. Most people were hiding in their houses, not daring to go out at all. Clearly, this place had been destroyed by the super mutant zombie. He took out the chameleon camouflage uniform and changed into it. His skin and camouflage uniform became the same color as the surrounding environment. Then he quickly rushed towards the base. The base had been destroyed to this extent, so naturally, there was no one guarding the wall. Without the hunter and psychokinesis, they could not guard it even if they wanted to. Immortal easily rushed to the bottom of the apartment building. He looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to him. Only then did he slowly go upstairs. He did not even take off his clothes and directly laid on the bed. After working for an entire night, he was indeed tired. He closed his eyes and checked the evolution points he had gained from this night in his mind. With a glance, he discovered that his evolution points had unknowingly reached 810,000. He was only 20 million away from 100 million. He yawned and revealed a satisfied smile. He took out the virtual sentry tower and set it up on the top of the apartment building. A moment later, there was a light snoring sound. At the same time, in base C1, Yang Kong was lying in the hospital. His body had many fractures, and his lungs were pierced by broken bones. He was only left with half a life. However, compared to the injuries on his body, the trauma in his heart was obviously greater. He lay on the hospital bed, his entire body wrapped in bandages. Only a pair of eyes were exposed. This pair of eyes was staring at the ceiling. Without blinking, all the nurses and doctors would be frightened by his eyes when they came to change his dressing or examine him. He hated himself for not having the ability to protect his daughter. If he was still a hunter and had a genetic martial art, his daughter would not have been taken away. If he was still, however, there were no ifs. Reality was so cruel. He did not know how long he stared at the ceiling. Finally, someone walked in from outside the door. It was his neighbor, the head of the laboratory, Dr. Chen. Ever since they became neighbors, Dr. Chen had always had a good impression of Yang Kong. It was even a little like the two of them living together. However, Yang Kong was busy with work, and he was afraid that his daughter would not be willing. Therefore, this matter had been dragged on. Dr. Chen was also shocked by Yang Kang's eyes that were staring at the ceiling. A moment later, she shook her head and sighed softly. Yang Kong, this matter, sigh, you have to take care of your body. Maybe Xiaoyan is still alive and waiting for you to find her. Dr. Chen really couldn't think of any words to comfort Yang Kong. She could only give him some hope so that he could live on. After she finished speaking, she saw that Yang Kong did not respond. She could only divert Yang Kang's attention and talk about some other things. However, after more than 10 minutes, Yang Kong did not respond at all. His eyes never blinked. He just kept staring at the ceiling. Sigh, Dr. Chen sighed again. Then have a good rest. I will leave first. Yang Kong still did not respond. Dr. Chen sighed again, got up and walked out of the door. At this moment, Yang Kang's voice came from behind. Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen stopped in her tracks and hurriedly turned her head. Yang Kang's voice was weak and feeble. You once said that you developed a drug stronger than the X2 virus gene enhancer. Dr. Chen knew what Yang Kong meant. She shook her head and said, the Super X virus gene enhancer is extremely unstable. After the injection, it can only stay awake for a period of time. After that, it will lose its self-consciousness and become an artificial mutated zombie. So we have already given up on that project. Inject me, inject. Although his breath was weak, Yang Kang's last two words were almost roared out. His eyes were already a little red. It looked a little ferocious. Dr. Chen's eyes were already wet. I also know that you miss your daughter. I also hope that Xiaoyan is fine, but I must save her. Just take it as I beg you, Yang Kong roared again. Dr. Chen reached out and wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. Okay, but I have to apply to the base chief to restart the project. Chapter 121. Base C1. After the base chief discussed with everyone, he agreed to Dr. Chen restarting the Super X virus enhancer project. Previously, they gave up on this project because they couldn't directly use living humans for experiments. If they couldn't collect more data, they couldn't improve the virus enhancer. But now, in order to save his daughter, Yang Kong volunteered to inject the Super X virus enhancer. They took advantage of the situation and agreed. Although they didn't think that Yang Kang's daughter was still alive. But this way, at least they could collect some data. The previous data and information of this project had been sealed. There were still a few finished Super X virus enhancers stored in the cold storage. Now, they just needed to find them and make some preparations before the injection. A day later, this enhancer had been injected into Yang Kang's body. A few hours later, Yang Kang's body underwent drastic changes. The injuries on his body, under the improvement of the virus, had completely recovered. His height had also reached 3 meters. Both his arms could transform into genetic weapons. Dual genetic weapons. According to the physical test data, the current him, whether it was strength or speed, was actually equivalent to a level 10 hunter. Even a slightly more daring prediction would say that his combat power had far surpassed a level 10 hunter. Of course, this was only when he still had his own consciousness. Not long after, he would become a level 10 artificial zombie with super strength. Of course, the laboratory held the control of the virus. If he wanted to attack humans in the future, the laboratory could use a tranquilizer gun to inject the Super X virus inhibitor into him. First make him lose his ability to move, then kill him. At this time, looking at Yang Kang's tall figure walking out of the laboratory, everyone couldn't help but be moved. For his daughter, he was willing to become a zombie. A father's love was like a mountain. In the past, they only heard about it but never really felt it. This time, they really felt the weight of these 4 words. When Yang Kong walked forward, Dr. Chen couldn't help but follow a few steps. He shouted, Yang Kong. Yang Kong turned around and looked at Dr. Chen. His eyes flashed. Dr. Chen, what I owe you in this life, I will pay you back in my next life. Then, he turned around abruptly and leaped more than 300 meters. A moment later, he came under the city wall. With a light jump, he jumped over the city wall. He quickly ran into the wilderness. In base C2. After midnight, Immortal woke up naturally. The voice in his mind said, "System, double the reward of Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Elixir." The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face designated reward. Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid. Requires 10,000 evolution points. Doubling requires 100,000 evolution points. Signing in this time requires a total of 110,000 evolution points. Do you want to sign in? Emoshur, Motherf asterisk Ker. The amount of evolution points required for the designated reward and the doubled reward had increased to 10 times the previous amount. Did it have to be so dark? But after thinking about it, he felt relieved. The effect of the Dragon Bloodline Modification Elixir was more than 10 times stronger than before. It was probably dozens or even hundreds of times more powerful. Since the cost of signing in would be 10 times more than before, he would still be profiting from it. Thinking of this, he replied in his mind, "Confirm sign-in." Sign-in successful. Sign-in reward, 10 drops of Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid. The reason why Emoshur did not choose to strengthen the dragon will first was because it was too slow to strengthen. Moreover, with the current dragon will, he could walk unhindered in the entire Wuxia, but at least no human or zombie could kill him. It was enough for the time being. Therefore, he planned to increase his body's strength to level 10 before strengthening the dragon will. He took out a bottle of modification liquid from the system space and drank it. After a while, his body began to heat up. Now that he drank the modification liquid, it did not take 6 hours like the first time. In just 5 minutes, he had completely digested this drop of modification liquid. Then he began to drink the second drop. In less than an hour, all 10 drops of modification liquid were consumed. He could feel that his body was full of energy. Under the investigation of his telekinesis, he found that the strength of his cells had increased by a lot. With this speed, he estimated that he would be able to become a level 2 great hunter in at most 10 days. At the same time, the people in the base were in despair and panic. All the hunters and psychokinesis in the base were captured. Even the leader of the base was captured. And that super mutated zombie was so powerful that it made people despair. It could attack the base again at any time. The people spent 2 full days in extreme fear and despair. However, on the 3rd day, exciting news came. The hunters and psychokinesis who were captured had returned. Just like how they didn't expect the 30 ordinary humans to come back alive, no one expected the hunters and psychics to come back alive after being captured by the super mutated zombies. A group of hunters hurriedly welcomed the hunters and psychokinesis into the base. While ordering people to bring them water and food, he also inquired about how they managed to escape. The hunters and psychokinesis looked at each other. In their minds, they recalled the human wearing blood-red armor and a dragon head helmet. However, they knew that even if they said it, these people would not believe them. Even now, they could not believe that there was such a strong human. The super mutated zombie that they could not resist was smashed to death by the human's telekinesis. The entire huge stadium was blown away by the human's telekinesis. This sounded like complete nonsense. In the end, the leader of the base spoke. It was a mysterious powerhouse who saved us, and on the night of the heavy rain, he should be the one who killed all the strong mutated zombies. Also, he was the one who slaughtered more than 2 million zombies in the Blood-Red City and saved the 30 people. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. In that case, the mysterious powerhouse was much stronger than the hunters and psychokinesis. Not to mention other things, he slaughtered more than 2 million zombies in just over an hour. Was there any other human in the world who could do that? A hunter suddenly thought of something and asked, "Leader, you mean the mysterious powerhouse is in our base and has been secretly protecting us?" The leader nodded. Based on his intuition, the mysterious expert didn't seem to be protecting the base or everyone on purpose. He was willing to give everyone some hope when they were in despair. Under such circumstances, the mysterious powerhouse was the best hope. I see. It's all thanks to the mysterious powerhouse. It seems that I have to go to the temple and burn some incense for the mysterious powerhouse. What incense? The mysterious powerhouse is not dead. It's better to set up a longevity tablet. In the following day, the news of the mysterious powerhouse spread throughout the base. This made the people who were in despair begin to cheer up. Moreover, someone actually went to the temple and set up a longevity tablet for the mysterious powerhouse. Immortal woke up early in the morning and wandered around the base. Walking around early in the morning every day, he felt refreshed. Along the way, he saw people passing by from time to time, and they were all going in the same direction. Immortal felt strange. He asked an old man who passed by. "Sir, what are you doing?" The old man replied. "Going to the temple to set up a longevity tablet for the mysterious powerhouse." Chapter 122. Go and set up a longevity tablet for the mysterious powerhouse and pray for him. Pray that God will bless him for a lifetime of good health. The old man said. Immortal couldn't help but laugh. This was interesting. He immediately said, "I'll go and take a look." He already knew that there was a small temple in base C2 called Liaoyuan Temple. He once went there to sign in. In the end, he only signed a book called I Jin Jing. Don't get me wrong. This was not a martial art that could cleanse one's meridians and marrow like in Wuxia novels. It was just an obscure scripture that was hard to understand. So Immortal never went there again. When Immortal arrived at the entrance of Liaoyuan Temple, he saw that there were already more than 30 people lined up. These people were almost all talking about the mysterious powerhouse. The mysterious powerhouse is even stronger than the super mutated zombies. He's far stronger than a level 10 hunter. Within an hour, he wiped out 2 million zombies in the blood-red city. He's not human. He's an animal. Damn, you don't want to live anymore? Sorry, sir. I'm not scolding him. It's just an exaggeration. The man quickly put his hands together and bowed in all 4 directions. Sorry. Immortal, on the other hand, found it funny. These people were already in despair, as if the end of the world was about to befall them. In the end, the mysterious powerhouse appeared and brought them hope. It was not strange that they were now setting up a longevity tablet for the mysterious powerhouse. But when he scanned it with his telekinesis and saw the name written on the longevity tablet, he was a little speechless. There were 4 words written on the tablet. Mysterious powerhouse. It was a little too nonsensical. But thinking about it, these people didn't know what the mysterious powerhouse was called. Immortal followed the crowd and slowly entered the small temple. There were 2 monks in the temple. One had a white beard and looked to be in his 60s or 70s. The other was only in his 20s. When everyone saw the old monk, they all called him master. The old monk put his hands together and bowed to everyone one by one. Immortal watched for a while and felt that it was boring, so he planned to leave. But when he turned around, he suddenly thought of something. I seem to have heard that this old monk had stayed in your province for a long time. His heart stirred, and he immediately dismissed the idea of leaving. When most of the people had left, he came to the old monk. The old monk sized up Immortal from head to toe and said, "Benefactor, your tools are extraordinary. You are no ordinary person." Immortal was a little surprised. Could it be that this old monk really knew how to read fortunes? Or face reading? He shrugged and said, "I'm just a zombie keeper." The old monk shook his head. Liu Bei used to sell woven mats and Jiang Shang used to fish. It wasn't because of their status, but because of their manners. I see that Benefactor is calm and composed. Every movement of yours is natural. He's definitely not immortal. Immortal chuckled. Doop doop doop. He had never believed in fortune-telling or physiognomy. However, the way the old monk spoke made him sound like a knowledgeable swindler. Immortal continued to ask, "Master, I heard that you used to live in your province?" The old monk nodded. "I was the abbot of Qingzhen Temple in Fan's Pure Mountain in your province for 15 years. Immortal had heard of Fan's Pure Mountain. It was a famous Buddhist mountain. At the top of the mountain, above the sea of clouds, there were 2 floating temples. The 2 temples were connected by a bridge. To get to the 2 floating temples, one had to go through the 10,000 steps ladder. However, he was not concerned about that at this moment. He said again, "Master, you should know the terrain of your province very well." The old monk replied with a smile, "Although I rarely go out, I have read a lot of books. I know the terrain of your province very well." Immortal nodded. He took out the map and asked, "Master, I accidentally got a map. Can you take a look at this place?" This was a map obtained from the system. No one else knew what it was for. Naturally, there was no need to worry about someone snatching it. Even if they did snatch it, they wouldn't be able to walk so far in the wilderness to find the dragon ruins. The old monk took the map and looked at it carefully for a moment. He said, "The dragon ruins should be the cave where the legendary dragon lived." "It's all nonsense." Immortal nodded. "I know it's just for fun. I'm just curious about where these two places are." The old monk looked at it carefully a few more times and said, "I've never been to the one in the new province, so I don't know. But the one in your province should be near Fan's Pure Mountain." At this point, the old monk said with a smile, "I remember a legend about the dragon that I heard when I was the abbot of Fan's Pure Mountain." Immortal was interested when he heard that. The old monk asked the young monk not far away to pour a glass of water for Immortal. He reached out and asked Immortal to sit down. He also sat on the chair next to him and said, "You should know that there are two peaks at the top of Fan's Pure Mountain that reach into the sky." Immortal nodded. "One is Old Golden Peak, and the other is Red Cloud Golden Peak." The old monk looked up at the blue sky outside the door as if he was recalling the past. Legend has it that in ancient times, Fan's Pure Mountain was not called Fan's Pure Mountain, but Taming Dragon Mountain. In ancient times, there was a plague dragon that wreaked havoc in the world, and the people had no way to make a living. A powerful man suppressed the plague dragon with a mountain, and this mountain was called Taming Dragon Mountain. A dragon-suppressing nail was inserted into the dragon's head and heart. These were the two golden peaks later. It is said that in the Ming dynasty, the plague dragon seemed to be trying to escape and kept struggling. The mountain shook. Emperor Wang Lin ordered people to build 4 royal temples on the mountain to suppress the plague dragon. Immortal's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He asked, "Master, is the plague dragon you're talking about a Western dragon or a Wuxia dragon?" The old monk was stunned by this question. Then he laughed. He shook his head and said, "It's just a legend. Don't take it seriously." Immortal also laughed. "I've been obsessed with these legends since I was a child. Master, please don't laugh at me." The old monk also joked. The Wuxia dragon is a kind dragon that creates clouds and brings rain to the common people. The Western dragon is greedy for pleasure, plundering gold and silver, and harming thousands of people. I think this should be a Western evil dragon. Immortal nodded in agreement. "Master, you're right." After chatting for a while, Immortal put away the map. He said goodbye to the two monks and left leisurely. The two monks walked him to the door and watched Immortal's back as he left. The little monk said, "Master, this guy is idling around. Why do you care about him?" The old monk said, "In this doomsday, everyone is afraid. They can't sleep peacefully and can't wake up peacefully. It's rare to see someone as calm and carefree as him." The little monk curled his lips and said, "He's just a pretentious prick." The old monk glanced at the little monk and said, "Are you talking about me or him?" The little monk hurriedly shook his head. "Master, how dare I talk about you? Of course I'm talking about him." The old monk didn't pay attention to the little monk anymore. He watched Immortal's back until he turned the corner in front of him. Then he withdrew his gaze. He chanted the name of Buddha. Amitabha. He turned around and entered the small temple. The little monk curled his lips and whispered, "He's kind." He also followed in. Chapter 123. Immortal returned to his residence and thought to himself. For the time being, he couldn't go to the dragon ruins in Brahma's Pure Mountain. He learned from the previous consciousness of the broodmother that the strongest zombie in Wuxia, the level 3 super mutant zombie, was near Brahma's Pure Mountain. Therefore, he planned to sign in for a while and raise his strength to a level 3 or even level 4 Great Hunter. When he could completely dominate the entire Wuxia, he would go to Brahma's Pure Mountain to take a look. In the next few days, he continued to sign in every day. When he was free, he strolled around the base. He thought that after killing the super mutant zombie, a large number of zombies around it, and destroying the broodmother, he could sign in peacefully for a while. He didn't expect that trouble would still come to him. On this day, the helicopter brought back a laboratory researcher from base C3. This made the base leader very happy. They were looking for people in various bases to build a laboratory. However, almost no base was willing to help them these days. He had no choice but to send some people to bring some supplies to other bases in exchange for a researcher. This was a woman who wasn't very beautiful but had a very good smell. What was the smell? The smell of body odor. Even if it was painful, he could still smell the body odor on her through thick clothes. However, the base was very welcoming of her arrival. Although the super mutant zombie almost destroyed the entire base last time. This greatly increased the difficulty of building a laboratory. However, after seeing that other bases were able to quickly strengthen hunters and psychokinesis because of their laboratories, they also made up their minds to overcome any difficulties and build a laboratory. Now that they could borrow a researcher from other bases, they were naturally very excited. This morning, Immortal stood on the roof of the apartment building and looked around the base with the blood demon's eyes. This was a habit he had developed after coming to base C2. There was basically no corpse aura around the base. After destroying the broodmother, the corpse aura around the entire base seemed to have decreased a lot. However, at this moment, his blood demon's eyes suddenly focused. Because he saw that in the base, in addition to the corpse farm, there was a new corpse aura. This corpse aura was more than 1,000 times stronger than the corpse aura of the more than 20 zombies in the corpse farm. Looking at this corpse aura, it was very likely to be a super mutant zombie. Immortal's heart trembled slightly as he thought of a possibility. He immediately went downstairs and headed to the research site where the corpse aura was. Due to the arrival of the female researcher, the base quickly started to build a laboratory. Xiao Di and the female researcher were busy at the construction site. When no one was paying attention, Immortal swept his blood demon eyes over. He found that the huge corpse energy that was comparable to that of a super mutant zombie was actually emitted from the female researcher. At the same time, the attributes of the female researcher appeared in his mind. Species, zombie. Level 2 super mutant zombie, level 10 psychokinesis, PFFF. Immortal almost spurted out a mouthful of blood. This woman was actually a zombie. No wonder she had such a strong body odor. She had deliberately made it up to cover up the corpse odor on her body. As for the fact that this woman was a level 2 mutant zombie, he was not surprised at all. After all, judging from the corpse energy, this woman was definitely a super mutant zombie. What he didn't expect was that this woman actually had psychokinesis. This was the first time he knew that there was psychokinesis among zombies. But he understood after thinking about it. Psychokinesis had a strong consciousness. Even after turning into zombies, their consciousness wouldn't be weakened. So after being infected with psychokinesis, it was very likely that they would become psychokinesis zombies. Psychokinesis was almost always under heavy protection. Psychokinesis was rarely infected, so it was his first time seeing a psychokinesis zombie. But there was one thing that surprised him. This zombie turned out to be a level 10 psychokinesis. One had to know that the strongest human psychic was only level 6. Immortal did not expose this female zombie. He was a little curious. This super mutant zombie, pretending to be a human, mixed in with the crowd, what was her purpose? Since he had nothing to do, he wanted to see how she would perform. 11 o'clock at night. Immortal was lying in bed, waiting for the arrival of 12 o'clock. At this moment, a figure quietly came to his door. This figure was none other than the female researcher. Her level 10 telekinesis probed into Immortal's room. She saw Immortal sleeping in the room. Her right hand turned into a half-meter long claw. She scratched the door of the room. Chi. The 1 centimeter thick steel plate on the door was easily sliced open like paper, leaving a huge crack in it. The female researcher entered the room and found the bedroom. She saw Immortal lying on the bed, snoring softly. A cold, murderous intent flashed in her eyes. Then her right claw turned into two sanguisurincus. One pierced Immortal's head, the other pierced Immortal's heart. Puff puff. With two soft sounds, Immortal's head and heart were easily pierced. A trace of excitement flashed in the female researcher's eyes. The tentacles continued to drill in and out of Immortal's body. Like two violent blood snakes, they drilled dozens of holes in Immortal's body. She didn't stop until she was sure that Immortal couldn't be more dead. She let out a low roar from her throat. The next moment, she turned around and fled out of the door. However, just as she reached the door, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Then her expression changed. She saw that at the door, a figure was standing under the moonlight, looking at her with a playful attitude. The female researcher's heart tightened, and she quickly used her telekinesis to investigate the corpse in the room. She saw that the wounds on the corpse were quickly healing. Even the head and heart were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The female researcher turned around and looked at Immortal outside the door. What was going on? What the hell? But there was no time to think. Her right hand instantly transformed into a sanguisurincus as thick as an arm, and stabbed towards Immortal. Although she was a level 10 psychokinesis, zombies felt that using weapons was not as convenient as using their own claws or sanguisurincus. So she used the sanguisurincus to attack first. However, when her two sanguisurincus were 1 meter away from Immortal, they hit an invisible wall. No matter how hard she tried, the sanguisurincus couldn't move forward even an inch. This made the female researcher very frightened. As a psychokinesis, she understood telekinesis very well. Telekinesis could only be used to control objects. When could it be used to directly defend? In order to condense telekinesis into a defensive barrier, one first needed an extremely large amount of telekinesis. Even she, a level 10 psychokinesis, was far from being able to do it. Secondly, one needed to have extreme control over telekinesis. This wasn't something that any level 10 psychokinesis could do. A thought flashed through the female researcher's mind. This human was a freak. While she was still in shock, more than 10 sanguisurincus extended from her body and attacked Immortal. At the same time, her level 10 telekinesis was released. Chapter 124. When the female researcher saw that her attack had missed, she immediately attacked Immortal with more than a dozen sanguisurincus and telekinesis. This time, she had learned her lesson. The sanguisurincus circled around, intending to bypass the barrier. However, after circling around and attacking Immortal's back, she once again hit the invisible barrier. Only then did she realize that the invisible telekinesis barrier was omnidirectional. At the same time, her telekinesis also attacked Immortal. However, just as her psyche power touched Immortal's body trembled. Suddenly, a violent and domineering telekinesis spread out from Immortal's body. It was like a tsunami, like an earthquake. It counterattacked her telekinesis. Almost in an instant, her telekinesis was directly defeated. She didn't even have the chance to retreat into her body. At the same time, her mind was already blank. She had lost her ability to think. Only instinctive desire was left. A shocking roar burst out from her throat. She pounced towards Immortal. Immortal activated his dragon telekinesis. The female researcher was instantly lifted up. She flew out of the door involuntarily. Then she flew towards the sky. The female researcher tried to struggle. But that domineering telekinesis made it impossible for her to resist. Soon she disappeared into the night sky. A moment later, a patrol team was patrolling near the corpse farm. But at this moment, bang, a loud sound suddenly came from about 10 meters to their left. This loud sound came so suddenly that almost all the team members were shocked and subconsciously jumped a few steps to the side. Then, they looked in the direction of the loud sound. They saw something falling from the sky. They shone their flashlights over. Their expressions immediately changed. They saw the outline of a human in the dust. Taking a closer look, they saw that it was indeed just the outline of a human. It had already been smashed into a pulp. It was badly mutilated. and there was a lot of ice shards on the surface of its body. It had fallen from a height of at least 5,000 to 6,000 meters. These patrol team members all subconsciously looked up at the sky. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Other than that, they couldn't see anything. The few of them were all panic-stricken. Soon, the members of the hunter group arrived. After investigating the scene, they identified the body as the female researcher based on the clothes on the body. It wasn't easy for them to borrow this female researcher. He had only been here for a day, and he was already killed? When the chief of the base found out about this, he ordered a thorough investigation. It was 3 o'clock at night. Base chief's office. The bureau chief frowned. Someone had killed a researcher. This was clearly an attempt to sabotage the base's plans to build a laboratory. Who was the one who didn't want the base to build a laboratory? No matter how hard he thought about it, he could not think of such a person. There were a few people sitting on the sofa in his office. Staff Officer, Wang Lin, and Xianxia. These were all his capable subordinates. However, the three of them were also frowning at this moment, not saying a word. They were here because they wanted to discuss with the chief who could be the murderer. Secondly, they were waiting for orders. As long as there were any clues, they would act immediately. Chief, to be able to throw someone down from a height of 5,000 to 6,000 meters, other than a flying mutant beast, it could only be that mysterious strong man. There were no flying mutant beasts tonight, so it's most likely that mysterious strong man did it. The staff officer said. The chief nodded. I thought of that too. But why did the mysterious strong man stop us from building a laboratory? The chief's frown deepened. If it was really done by the mysterious strong man, then there was nothing they could do. Wang Lin and Xianxia looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. After a while, a soldier walked in. Chief, the blood analysis is out. Everyone's eyes focused. Perhaps they could get some clues from the blood analysis. The soldier continued. The female researcher carried a large amount of virus X in her body. According to the results, she should be a zombie. Zombie? Everyone's eyes widened at the same time. Even the chief was in disbelief. Wang Lin shook his head. Could it be a mistake? The female researcher is a zombie? We borrowed her from base C3. The soldier replied, the person in charge of the blood analysis has already done it 3 times, and the results are all the same. She's a zombie. The few of them were shocked, but they also felt relieved one after another. If the female researcher was a zombie, then it made sense for the mysterious strong man to kill her. The soldier continued. And according to the blood analysis, the strength of her cells far exceeds that of our hunters. I'm afraid she's a level 10 strong mutant zombie, or even a super mutant zombie. When everyone heard this, they all felt a lingering fear. They had seen the power of a super mutant zombie. If the mysterious strong man did not find and get rid of the female researcher early, then their entire base would be in big trouble again. They should be thankful and grateful to the mysterious strong man. The chief said to the soldier, who brought her back, call that person over. Soon, the helicopter pilot was brought over. The chief's face was gloomy as he said, tell me in detail how you met the female researcher and how you brought her back. The helicopter pilot also knew that something had happened. He did not dare to hide anything. He hurriedly explained what had happened to him. When he arrived at base C3, he said a lot of good things, but base C3 did not agree to lend them the researcher. Helplessly, he planned to leave. But just as he was about to leave, a woman suddenly rushed over. She said that she was a researcher in the laboratory and had volunteered to come to base C2. Thus he brought her back. He did not expect that this female researcher was a super mutant zombie disguised as a human. The pilot felt a chill on the back of his neck. He actually stayed in the same helicopter with a super mutant zombie for more than 40 minutes. It was like taking a stroll through the gates of hell. It was 2F*King exciting, at the same time, in Immortal's room. He ordered the virus clone to clean up the bloodstains in the room. He himself checked the memories of the super mutant zombie. It turned out that this super mutant zombie's arm was lightly scratched by a zombie's claw. She became a zombie after being infected. After that, she mutated into a super mutant zombie in a blood pool in a nest. After becoming a super mutant zombie, her skin looked no different from a normal person's. Only her eyes were still grayish-white. As long as she wore black contact lenses, she would look completely human from the outside. After that, she received orders from the nest to assassinate Immortal. But she did not expect that Immortal had the blood demon's eyes and could easily tell that she was a zombie. After checking these memories, Immortal sneered. Interesting. These nests actually sent zombies to assassinate him. When he became a level 3 great hunter and could do whatever he wanted in Wuxia, it would be the day these nests were destroyed. Chapter 125. The next day, in order to express goodwill to the mysterious powerhouse, the base chief let people spread what happened last night. Naturally, people were grateful to the mysterious powerhouse. However, other than gratitude, there were also other comments. Why are strange things happening in the base recently? Yeah, so many strange things have never happened before. It seems, ever since those two people from base C1 came, the base has not been peaceful. Now that you mention it, it's true. Before they came, we hadn't had any trouble here for a few years. As soon as the two of them came, there were strong mutated zombies coming to the base to capture people. Then there were super mutated zombies that captured all the hunters and psychokinesis. Now even zombies have begun to disguise themselves as humans. Although I don't believe in ghosts and gods, these two people are like jinxes. It's really unsettling. The matter of the super mutated zombies had come to an end. That night, Immortal once again signed in 10 drops of the Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid. He only took 3 drops. He felt his body begin to heat up. Every cell in his body became abnormally active. All the cells in his body were no longer pure human cells. They had been changed by the modification liquid into cells that were stronger than human cells and could hold more energy. Of course, this was only less than 1 in 10 million. 5 minutes later, the hot feeling in his body gradually disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a feeling of strength. In his mind, his attribute interface showed frowny face name, Immortal, level 2 Great Hunter, level 1 Long Xianxia, evolution direction, Titan Dragon. Immortal was overjoyed. Originally, it was extremely difficult for a great hunter to advance by 1 level. If there were other great hunters on Earth, it would take more than 10 or even decades to advance by 1 level. However, he had advanced by 1 level in just 10 days. He had advanced even faster than those corpse hunters. If others knew about this, they would probably be envious to death. Then, Immortal estimated. With the effect of the modification liquid, it would probably take 3 months to advance to level 3. But that might not be the case. If the system leveled up again, who knew what the effect would be? Maybe after leveling up, it would increase by 100 times. Wouldn't that mean he could level up again in just a few days? However, most of the zombies and mutant beasts near base C2 had been killed by him. There was no source of evolution points. On the other hand, it would consume 110,000 yuan a night. When would the system be able to upgrade again? However, there were still many zombies and mutant beasts around base C1. He had already completed his work at base C2, so there was no point in staying any longer. She had not seen Happy for many days, and she still missed him a little. No matter how one looked at it, they would have to leave after 4 or 5 days at most. In the next few days, he often went to the Karma Temple to chat with the old monk. The old monk knew a lot of strange stories. Immortal treated it as a story. At the same time, in the temple, the people who came to offer incense occasionally complained about the two people from base C2. Immortal just laughed it off. Would an elephant care about the complaints of an ant? That night, after Immortal signed in, he let the virus clone lie on the bed to replace him. Meanwhile, his main body entered the dragon's cave. This was his habit after obtaining the dragon's cave. The virus clone lay on the bed so that no one would notice that he had inexplicably disappeared. At the same time, if someone wanted to harm him, the virus clone could also die in his place. His main body slept and rested in the dragon's cave to nurture Long. After a period of nurturing, his Long Wei had obviously strengthened a lot. If he encountered that level 2 super mutant zombie again, he could release Longwei and make her feel fear. But that night, while he was nurturing Longwei, suddenly his mind moved slightly. The clone in the room outside had a trace of his dragon will. He could sense the outside world through the clone. In his perception, the ground suddenly shook violently. When the clone spread its psychic power out of a radius of 1,000 meters, it found that all the surrounding houses, trees, and utility poles were shaking violently. Earthquake. Immortal sighed. He couldn't sleep well. He retreated from the dragon's cave. Then he put the virus clone into his backpack. At this moment, under the violent shaking, the entire building had begun to collapse. Rumble, rumble. From time to time, huge pieces of cement fell down. However, when the cement hit the top of Imosher's head, it was gently swept away by his dragon will. An ordinary level 1 psychic could at most lift something that weighed a ton with psychic power. However, Imosher's dragon will could easily lift something that weighed dozens of tons. So sweeping away the cement was not a problem. Then he took a step forward and came to the square in front of the emergency shelter. In the next moment, he took a step forward. Rumble, the entire apartment building collapsed with a bang. Smoke and dust swept out like a tsunami. Imosher jumped out of the range of the smoke and dust. He used his psychic power to explore a radius of 10 kilometers. Within this 10 kilometers, 1/3 of the houses had collapsed. People screamed, ran, and cried in horror. This earthquake lasted for a full 5 minutes. And the epicenter was in the residential area. After the earthquake, people stayed in the open space for a few hours. It was late winter, and people were covered in dust, cold, and sleepy, but they didn't dare to go back to sleep. Those who had lost their relatives and friends, some were crying heart-wrenchingly, some were whimpering softly. There were also people who kept complaining. What's going on? First, the strong mutated zombie came to the base to capture people, then the super mutated zombie captured the hunter and psychokinesis, then the super mutated zombie disguised as humans to sneak into the base, and now there's an earthquake. Oh heavens, are you really going to kill them all? During this period of time, the base hasn't been peaceful at all. Sigh, is the real end of the world coming? Someone recalled the previous remarks. Don't you think it's strange? All of this happened after the 2 people from base C2 came. That's right, everything was fine before they came. Someone asked the old monk, Master, do you think those 2 people are evil spirits that crawled out of hell and came to base C2 specifically to take our lives? The old monk shook his head. Amitba, all effects have a cause. What was planted in the previous life, what was the result in this life? We can only face it calmly and bear our own karma. Don't make wild guesses and frame others. However, no one was in the mood to listen to the old monk's Zen theory at this time. It must be them. We have to get them out of base C2. Get them out. Getting out of base C2 is a light punishment. Let them leave and then go and harm other bases? Kill them. A man who had just lost 2 children roared with bloodshot eyes. Let them die. A man whose legs were smashed into a bloody mess also roared angrily. Chapter 126. These days, people had been in a state of panic and uneasiness. They had been suppressed for too long and needed an outlet to vent their emotions. Especially today, more than 100 people had died in the earthquake. More than 700 people had been injured. Those who had lost their relatives and friends, or those who had lost their limbs, were almost hysterical at this moment. My family is gone, my limbs are gone. Why are you still fine when I have lost everything? If I can't get better, none of you can get better. Under the accumulation of depression and hysteria, many people began to target Wuxia and Xianxia. Kill them. Burn them. They brought this disaster. Kill them. Wuxia looked at all of this coldly. He couldn't be bothered with these stupid humans. At the same time, he could understand how Ren and Xianxia felt when they were at base C1. However, unlike them, Ren and Xianxia couldn't escape at that time. If Wuxia wanted to leave, who could stop him? If he didn't want to leave, who could kill him? Seeing that he couldn't persuade everyone, The old monk could only shake his head helplessly and chant the name of Buddha. Amitabha. Perhaps this was the karma of benefactor Mo and the others. Hao Ren squeezed through the crowd and walked out. He said to everyone, "Brothers and sisters, I know how you feel. But you say that all of this is their fault. Do you have any evidence? They came to our base from thousands of kilometers away to help us. Now, not only are we not grateful to them, but we are also accusing them of something they didn't do. Isn't this too disappointing?" Xianxia also followed. Although she didn't say much and her tone was very cold. But she was very determined. "I believe them. In the past, if a level 5 hunter and a level 4 psychokinesis stood up and spoke, everyone would definitely be convinced. But today, everyone finally found an outlet to vent their emotions. Seeing that they were about to vent, how could it be so easy to block this outlet? Although the base chief heard what everyone was saying, he didn't step out to support Immortal and the others. As the leader, he knew that if everyone didn't vent their emotions, something big would happen. Anyway, it seemed that the laboratory would not be built. Since these two had become the target of everyone's venting, then let nature take its course. In the hunting group, there was a hunter with a look of grief and indignation. "Vice Commander Hao, Vice Commander Zhen. I also want to believe in you." But ever since they had arrived, all sorts of things had happened one after another. "My wife's leg was also broken just now. How can I believe that?" As soon as the corpse hunter said this, the others were filled with grief and indignation again. Psychokinesis, who had just lost her son, had bloodshot eyes. The veins on his forehead bulged. The words of the surrounding people were like adding oil to the fire. At a certain moment, he finally lost all reason. His son was dead, and he didn't want to live anymore. Don't live anymore. He activated his telekinesis and searched for Mo Shi and Xiao Di in the crowd. Soon, he found Xiao Di, who was more than 10 meters away. Then, more than 30 throwing knives flew over everyone's heads and headed straight for Xiao Di. However, he was only a level 3 psychokinesis. And Xiao Di's brain cells had been unearthed by Mo Shi before, and he was already a level 5 psychokinesis. Feeling the throwing knives coming, he activated his telekinesis. It instantly spread out. The 30 throwing knives were instantly sent flying far away. More than 20 throwing knives fell to the ground with a few clangs. But a few of them flew and fell into the crowd. A woman's arm was cut and she immediately screamed. The surrounding people immediately screamed and fled. Only Mo Shi and Xiao Di were left standing in the middle of the open space. The hunters and psychokinesis of the hunting group immediately stepped forward and surrounded Mo Shi and Xiao Di in a fan shape. The people who screamed and fled saw the hunters and psychokinesis at this moment. They turned back and shouted behind the hunters and psychokinesis. "This kid is psychokinesis. Damn, he hit it so well. He has bad intentions. He really hurt people. It seems that they did everything." He finally showed his true colors. "Kill him and avenge our family. Kill them. Kill them. If we don't kill them, our base won't be safe." The angry crowd kept raising their fists, waving them, and cursing behind the members of psychokinesis and the hunting group. Some people even picked up bricks and stones by the side of the road and threw them at Mo Shi and Xiao Di. Hao Ren and Xianxia wanted to stop them, but how could they stop these crazy people? They couldn't use force directly. The old monk could only lower his eyelids, put his palms together, and keep chanting in a low voice, "Amitabha, Amitabha, Amitabha." The base chief saw that it was about time, and his eyes were cold. He ordered the hunting group, all psychokinesis, suppress his telekinesis. Hunters, shrink the encirclement and prevent them from escaping. Hunters, get close and take them down. If necessary, kill them on the spot. Everyone in the hunting group immediately took a few steps forward. More than 30 psychics were controlling 400 flying daggers with their telekinesis. At the same time, they approached Mo Shi and Xiao Di. Those hunters, each of them fierce, also closed in on Mo Shi and the others. Xiao Di's level 5 telekinesis was already a little overwhelmed when resisting more than 30 psychokinesis telekinesis at the same time. The hunters were less than 5 meters away from them. More than 400 throwing knives were less than 3 meters away from them. At this moment, Immortal moved. His right arm slowly thickened. Black scales appeared on the surface. His 5 fingers slowly turned into 5 dragon claws. Then he gently moved forward. Whoosh! An invisible force instantly extended forward. Boom! Time seemed to stop, and the scene seemed to be frozen. The next moment, on the ground, a huge ravine that was 50 meters wide appeared. This huge ravine actually extended for 5 kilometers. It almost divided the entire base into 2. The ravine was dozens of meters deep. The edges were as smooth as a mirror. It was as if a huge invisible blade had appeared from the sky and divided the ground into 2. The hunters, corpse hunters, and psychokinesis who had surrounded Immortal and the others. They were all wiped out. Even the thousands of people behind them were sliced into pieces by the invisible force, their flesh and blood splattering everywhere. Even those who weren't in the middle of the claw marks were directly torn apart by the invisible force. At this moment, silence. The cold wind whistled past. The angry crowd from before was as quiet as the dead. Those who were screaming shut their mouths. Those who threw bricks slipped from their hands to the ground. Some of the more timid ones were so scared that they collapsed to the ground. They looked at the huge ravine that was like a natural chasm, looked at the thousands of broken bodies in the ravine, and looked at the ground that was stained red with blood. They were all speechless for a long time. Immortal's cold eyes were emotionless. He withdrew his dragon claws. He turned around and slowly walked into the darkness in the distance. The old monk lowered his eyelids and slowly chanted the name of Buddha. Amitabha. Chapter 127. Immortal turned around and walked slowly into the darkness. Xiaodi also turned around and followed Immortal into the darkness. Behind them, the remaining 10,000 people couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. They were shocked, and their faces were full of shock. They were frightened, and their eyes were full of fear. 1/5 of the hunters in their hunting group were killed in an instant. Almost all the hunters and psychokinesis in the hunting group were killed. More than 1,000 crazy civilians were also turned into broken limbs and broken bodies. This zombie breeder's strength was terrifying. After a long time, the staff officer said in shock, "The mysterious strong man." Only then did everyone come back to their senses. The mysterious strong man. This was the mysterious strong man they had been talking about these days. The mysterious strong man they had set up a longevity tablet for. The strong man who killed more than 100 strong mutated zombies without making a sound. Within an hour, he slaughtered an entire city. The mysterious strong man who killed a super mutated zombie in one move. And what did they do? They wanted to kill the mysterious strong man. How stupid must one be to do such a thing? The mysterious strong man was angry, and thousands of people died. They were forced to do this. More importantly, if there were powerful zombies and mutated beasts, the mysterious strong man could kill them. Now, the mysterious strong man had abandoned the base. If more super mutated zombies came, they didn't even dare to think about the consequences. At this moment, their intestines were green with regret. Hao Ren and Xianxia also widened their eyes. Both of their minds were blank. In their eyes, Immortal was just an ordinary person. They didn't see anything different about him from ordinary people when they were in base C1 and on the way to base C2 by helicopter. They never thought that he was a hunter. And he was strong enough to kill dozens of hunters and more than 30 psychokinesis in one move. With such strength, he was probably not a level 10 hunter. He was more than a level 10 hunter. The chief of the base had a complicated expression on his face. There was shock, disbelief, and regret. That zombie breeder was the mysterious strong man? They should have known. When the two of them arrived at base C2, the mysterious man appeared. He should have known that the two of them were related to the mysterious expert. But he had overlooked it and been deceived by their appearances. Then he did such a stupid thing. This caused the mysterious expert to kill thousands of people in a fit of rage. Apart from a handful of hunters, The rest of the hunters and more than 30 psychokinesis were all killed. Most importantly, he had angered the mysterious expert and caused the base to lose a powerful guardian. At that moment, the chief of the base wished he could slap himself a few times on the spot. At this moment, the staff officer beside him walked over. He asked in a low voice, "Chief, what do we do now?" The bureau chief's brows were tightly furrowed, and his expression was ugly. After pondering for a long time, he opened his mouth to speak. However, before he could finish his sentence, bang! His entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. There was no flesh or bone. It had completely exploded at the cellular level. Only a few pieces of cloth were left behind, dancing in the cold wind along with the bloody mist. It was like a drunken bloody butterfly. It clearly showed everyone how the 100-strong mutated zombies had disappeared. The staff officer was covered in blood. He was extremely frightened. He took a few steps back and fell to the ground. Most of the people present squatted on the ground subconsciously. They held their heads with their hands. They were afraid that they would suddenly explode. They knew firsthand what it meant to be dominated by fear. Or rather, they had been completely dominated by fear. When the mysterious expert was angry, it was terrifying. At the scene, only 3 people could still barely stand. These 3 people were Hao Ren, Xianxia, and the old monk. After a long time, Hao Ren's face was dejected. He slowly shook his head and said to the crowd, "This is the result you want." Everyone was silent. They didn't dare to make a sound. The old monk lowered his eyelids and said, "Amitba. You reap what you sow." The little monk, who was squatting on the ground next to him, held his head tightly. A chill ran down his spine. He kept muttering, "Amitba. Don't kill me. Amitba. It's my mouth." He had once said that the zombie keeper was a pretentious prick. The zombie keeper was very powerful. If he found out, would he be in a good situation? In the wilderness. Immortal slowed down and slowly moved forward. Those people's so-called mysterious experts' anger were actually thinking too much. Immortal wasn't angry at all. With his current strength, those below the level of a grand hunter were ants. What was there to be angry about a group of ants? He had inadvertently saved these people a few times in times of danger. He didn't expect these people to be grateful to him and repay him. And now, these people had offended him and offended him. He wouldn't be angry at all. He would just kill them. As for the base chief, he naturally wouldn't let him go. Behind him, Xiaodi quickly caught up with him. But with level 5 psychokinesis, his body was only the same as an ordinary person's. No matter how fast he ran, he couldn't catch up with Immortal. Immortal turned his head and said, "I'm going back to base C1. If you want to go back, follow me slowly." This guy was too slow. He couldn't be bothered to wait. Anyway, with him cleaning up the zombies in front, this guy with the strength of level 5 psychokinesis wouldn't be in too much danger. Of course, with Immortal's current strength, he couldn't be bothered to deal with zombies below the level of super mutated. He directly let the virus clone deal with them in front. The virus clone had the strength of a level 10 hunter and level 10 psychokinesis. It wouldn't be too much of a problem to deal with these zombies and mutated beasts. Immortal treated the more than 1,000 kilometers as a vacation. On the 4th day, they passed by Emperor Qin's mausoleum. The mausoleum was still filled with corpse aura. The corpse aura was so heavy that it seemed to have solidified. It connected the sky and the earth. It seemed to have the aura of supremacy in the world. It actually made Immortal's heart palpitate slightly. However, this palpitating feeling was far less intense than the last time. Immortal frowned slightly. There was no virus hive nearby, so he couldn't know what was going on in the Xianxia hills. It was better not to pay attention to it for the time being. When he was stronger in the future, he would go there and try to see if he could sign something good. Then, he turned his head to look at the Terracotta Army Museum. There was no corpse aura there. He remembered the green-faced terracotta zombie he saw the last time. He took a step forward and came to the Terracotta Army Museum. With a sweep of his psychic power, Immortal frowned even more. In the entire Terracotta Army Museum, more than 8,000 terracotta figures had disappeared. The 3 huge terracotta pits were empty. There was nothing. Thinking of a certain possibility, Emo felt that it was a bit ridiculous. However, if this kind of nonsense was true, walking out of the museum, he looked in the direction of Emperor Qin's mausoleum. Previously, he didn't find any information about the so-called king in the consciousness of the virus hive. Could it be the king that those zombies mentioned before they died was there? Chapter 128. Emo took one last look at the direction of Emperor Qin's mausoleum. He didn't stay any longer. He walked towards base C1 with large strides. After half a day, he was finally not far from base C1. He took a look at his evolution points in his mind. In these few days, he had killed countless zombies and mutated beasts. He had already obtained more than 87 million evolution points. He was about to reach 100 million. Thus, he didn't immediately return to base C1. Instead, he circled around base C1 within 200 kilometers. He cleared out all the zombies and mutated beasts here. His evolution points had already reached 91 million. As for where to get the remaining 9 million, he had already thought of a place to go. There was a city about 300 kilometers northwest of base C1. Previously, from the consciousness of the virus hive, he saw that there was another virus hive in that city. If he went there, he would definitely be able to obtain enough evolution points. Moreover, since the virus hive had sent a super mutated zombie to assassinate him, then he would have to clear out all the virus hives step by step. He used the small success dragon shadow step, 10 kilometers in one step. In just 30 steps, he arrived at the city. When he arrived, all the plants had turned blood red. On the ground, Sanguisurincus intertwined. When Emo walked past, these Sanguisurincus slowly wrapped around Emo feet. However, when Emo released Longway, these Sanguisurincus retreated one after another. When he arrived at the entrance of the city, he looked with his blood demon eyes. The thick corpse aura seemed to have solidified. However, with Emo current strength, he didn't feel that this kind of corpse aura was very dangerous. The corpse aura here was far worse than the one in Emperor Qin's mausoleum. He entered the city through the highway toll booth. A huge dragon was swept across. With him as the center, all the zombies within a radius of 10 kilometers exploded into a bloody mist. When he walked forward, behind him, he left behind a bloody mist that was 20 kilometers wide. In the end, the bloody mist fell to the ground. The withered grass, walls, and ground that were already red were dyed even more bloody red. With such a width, there was no need to sweep back and forth in the city like before. As long as it was done once, the zombies in the city would be wiped clean. At the same time, his mind was once again filled with evolution points. Killed level 3 variant zombie. Evolution points plus 300. Killed level 5 strong variant zombie. Evolution points plus 5,000. In just over 10 minutes, most of the zombies in the city had been cleared by him. He looked at it in his mind. His evolution points had reached 99. 73 million points. The difference was less than 270,000. He turned around and looked at the place where the corpse chi was the densest. That should be where the nest was. Stepping on the blood-red ground, he walked towards the broodmother's nest. A moment later, they arrived at an underground parking lot. The Sanguisurincus in the parking lot was already as thick as an arm. Thousands of Sanguisurincus slithered towards Emo like snakes when they saw Emo. However, after Emo released his Longway, these Sanguisurincus immediately became obedient. One by one, they hurriedly shrank back with drooping heads. In the middle of the underground parking lot, there was a huge crack that was 5 meters wide and 50 meters long. Judging from the corpse chi, the broodmother's nest was under the crack. The broodmother's nest was really sneaky. It was actually built here. If he did not have the blood demon pupil, he might not have been able to find it. He first probed the broodmother's nest with his draconic sense. Under his investigation, there was a huge cave underground. The entire cave was a huge broodmother's nest. Emo jumped into the crack. The crack was 5 kilometers deep. Under the crack, It was so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. A thick smell of blood came from the dark tunnel ahead. In the dark tunnel, there were 23 level 10 variant zombies. However, with Immortal's current strength, even if they were level 10 variant zombies, they would explode into a bloody mist with just a sweep of his draconic sense. After getting rid of the 23 level 10 variant zombies, his evolution points had reached 96 million. He was less than 40,000 points away. This was the same as killing 4 level 10 variant zombies. Immortal couldn't help but feel a little excited. Soon he arrived at the huge cave. From here, he could only see 10 or so giant sarcomas with a diameter of 10 meters. These sarcomas had already blocked the entrance, so he could not see the situation inside. Immortal was planning to destroy these sarcomas. However, at this time, the ground behind him suddenly shook. Then, rumble, the dark tunnel that he had just passed began to collapse. Moments later, the tunnel above his head collapsed with a rumble. He quickly used his telekinesis to block above his head and behind him, forming a telekinesis barrier to block the falling rocks and dirt. However, when it rains, it pours. The huge sarcomas in front of him also exploded at this moment. Bang, bang, bang. However, the strange thing was that from the exploded sarcomas, what flowed out was not blood, but fiery red magma. That fiery red, hot magma surged towards Immortal. Immortal instantly realized that this was a trap. It was a trap set by the mother nest. The underground mother nest was a fake mother nest, and it was only there to lure him in. Then she would use the magma to kill him. Fuck, did this mother nest go somewhere to train? She's getting smarter and smarter. Last time she sent an assassin, this time she was trying to lure him in. At this time, the only thing Immortal could do was to use his draconic sense to block the rocks above and behind him. At the same time, he had to block the hot magma in front of him. However, even though his draconic sense was strong, it was not strong enough to block the thousands of tons of rocks above his head. In just a moment, the rocks above his head were already less than half a meter away from his head. He could only use more draconic sense above his head. However, this way the amount of draconic sense left for the magma was much less. At a certain moment, bang, the walls of the tunnel on his left and right also instantly cracked. From the left and right, a large amount of magma also surged out. This time, Immortal could no longer resist. He could only watch helplessly as the magma swallowed his feet, then his legs, waist, chest, until the top of his head was swallowed. At the same time, above the tunnel, Sanguisurincus as thick as thighs kept appearing in the entire underground parking lot. On the ground of the parking lot, thousands of Sanguisurincus appeared. A large amount of blood seeped out of the Sanguisurincus. In less than 5 minutes, the entire underground parking lot had formed a huge blood pool. The blood pool was more than 3 meters deep. More than 20 huge sarcomas had grown out of the 2 entrances of the parking lot, blocking the entrances. It turned out that this was the real virus mother nest. Soon, 7 or 8 level 10 strong mutated zombies squeezed in from the sarcomas. They let out excited roars from their throats. That human is finally dead. The trap set by the mother nest is really powerful. Once that human is dead, we can launch a general attack on the human base according to the king's will. Chapter 129. 129 His great Qin has fallen. The virus hive had set a trap and swallowed Immortal with magma. The real hive was then revealed. At this time, in the mother nest, the 7 level 10 mutant zombies were bathing in the blood pool as they roared and communicated with each other. Although that human is strong, he's still too stupid. He thought he could do whatever he wanted because he was strong, but he fell into the hive's trap. Sure enough, no matter how strong humans are, they're just a bunch of pitiful worms. Just as they were discussing, suddenly, rumble, almost instantly, the concrete above their heads shook violently. The 7 level 10 mutant zombies' faces all changed. The next moment, boom, the entire hive seemed to have been hit by a meteorite falling from the sky. It collapsed with a loud bang. The huge sarcomas at the entrance of the hive also exploded. Blood splattered everywhere. In almost an instant, the entire hive was buried under the ground. On the ground, Immortal looked at the huge pit in front of him that was more than 200 meters in diameter. There was no emotion in his cold eyes. A moment later, a level 10 mutated zombie crawled out of the ruins at the edge of the huge pit. When he saw Immortal's figure, his grayish-white eyes were full of horror and disbelief. How could it be? How could this human still be alive? Didn't he already die in the underground magma? But then, with horror, he threatened. The king won't let you go. The next moment. Boom! This level 10 mutated zombie's body had also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Only then did a faint smile appear on Immortal's face. The hive's trap was really deep, but it had underestimated Immortal's level of cowardice. He had the check-in system, but he could stay in the base for more than 10 years. Would such a person casually enter the underground fissure? When he was playing games in his previous life, he understood the essence of the word cowardice. Cowardly development, don't King wander. This was the sentence he said most often. How could a person who could be so cowardly while playing games casually enter an underground crack? Previously, when he entered the dragon ruins, he used his telekinesis to explore again, and then used the zombie puppets to probe inside first. Now that an unknown crack had appeared, he naturally couldn't go down. Instead, he created a virus clone and went to investigate. Sure enough, it was all part of the broodmother's trap. This broodmother is actually playing mind games with me. It's a pity that he's not as cunning as I am, smart. At this time, after killing those zombies, the evolution points in Immortal's mind finally broke through the 100 million mark. The system's voice prompted frowny face evolution points have reached 100 million. The system can be upgraded again. Do you want to upgrade? Immortal said, no. Unable to sign in during the upgrade period. Since he was already here, he naturally had to sign in before leveling up. System, sign in. Sign in successful. Sign in location, virus hive. Sign in reward, broodmother sanguisurincus. Immortal looked at the skill's description in his mind. Broodmother sanguisurincus. The virus in the body can produce a large number of sanguisurincus. Sanguisurincus can extend up to 50 kilometers to scout for information or be used for combat. Immortal moved his mind. Under his feet, a sanguisurincus as thick as an arm spread out. This sanguisurincus directly drilled into the ground. Then, under the ground, it spread out in all directions at an extremely fast speed. In the end, it spread out to a radius of 50 kilometers. At this moment, even if Immortal didn't use his dragon's will, everything within 50 kilometers was within his perception. His mind moved again. More than 30 kilometers away, under the feet of a strong mutated zombie, more than 10 sanguisurincus as thick as an arm suddenly stretched out. This strong mutated zombie had long been used to the sanguisurincus. Moreover, it knew that this sanguisurincus came from the broodmother, so it felt very familiar. Therefore, it didn't have the slightest bit of defense. But at this moment, more than 10 sanguisurincus suddenly pierced towards the strong mutated zombie. Puff, 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 puff. Every sanguisurincus pierced into the strong mutated zombie's body. Until death, the strong mutated zombie's eyes were filled with astonishment. In its eyes, the broodmother was like a mother. Every zombie was the broodmother's son. This was too vicious, it didn't even let its own son go. At the same time, it also encountered tens of thousands of zombies and mutated beasts. With Immortal as the center, within a radius of 50 kilometers, all the zombies and mutated beasts were attacked by the sanguisurincus at the same time. And in Immortal's mind, evolution points once again flooded the screen. With this wave, he obtained more than 1 million evolution points. At this time, Immortal said in his mind, the system can be upgraded. The system instantly replied, frowny face, this upgrade requires 12 hours. Unable to sign in during the upgrade. Confirm upgrade. Confirm. The system still had a bit of conscience. That was, it did not need to use evolution points during the upgrade. Otherwise, his 100 million evolution points would not be much left after leveling up. After doing all this, Immortal did not relax. This was because when he killed the broodmother, he had connected to the broodmother's consciousness. In the broodmother's consciousness, a vague figure appeared. He could feel that the broodmother's consciousness at that time had the same thought: King will not let you go. It was very clear that this figure should be the so-called king. Previously, Immortal had always thought that the king was a powerful zombie under the broodmother's control. But now, it seemed that the king was an existence above the broodmother's. This was also the reason why he could not find the king in the broodmother's consciousness. But this time, he could see the vague outline of the king in the broodmother's consciousness. It seemed to be a zombie. He could roughly feel that the king's strength should be at the level of a super-mutated zombie. As for what level of super-mutated zombie it was, he could not feel it for the time being. Moreover, the king actually sent a message to Immortal through the broodmother's consciousness. If you dare to destroy another broodmother's nest, I will make you pay the price. Immortal only sneered at this. What he hated the most in his life was people threatening him. After the system upgrade, he could peacefully sign in for a period of time. Once his strength increases, even if the king came, he would be able to slap it to death. At the same time, nearly 1,000 kilometers away, in the depths of Emperor Qin's tomb. In the dark main hall, a green-faced terracotta zombie was kneeling there motionlessly. It was as if it was a real terracotta. Above the main hall, on the dragon throne, a terracotta that seemed to have been sleeping for 1,000 years slowly opened its eyes. This terracotta was wearing a black dragon robe and a crown on its head. Its face was black. From its ears to its mouth, it had a long black beard. Its appearance was majestic and did not lose its dignity. Its entire body was filled with the aura of a king that looked down on the world. His gaze swept across the green-faced zombie terracotta under the main hall. The next moment, his figure instantly disappeared from the dragon throne. When he reappeared, he was already at the top of Emperor Qin's tomb. From here, he looked down at the surrounding wilderness. The sky was blue and the water was blue, but there was no one. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single living person. After a moment, his eyes flashed. From his throat, he let out a roar that sounded like a zombie's, but also like a human's roar. This roar reverberated in all directions. All the zombies and mutated beasts within a radius of dozens of kilometers were all frightened. My great Qin is dead. Chapter 130. After Immortal destroyed the nest, he didn't stay for long and went straight back to base C1. When everyone in base C1 saw that Immortal had returned, they were all excited. Although they had seen Immortal's ruthless side and were a little afraid of Immortal. But this was a mysterious powerhouse after all. His combat strength could be said to be abnormal. With him around, the base was absolutely safe. Because these people were in awe of Immortal, no one dared to get too close. They only dared to look at him from afar. At the same time, the chief of the base and the leader of the hunter group hurried over when they heard that Immortal had returned. But they all knew that Immortal liked peace and quiet. If they rushed over now, would it make Immortal unhappy? If Immortal was unhappy, he might tear 10,000 people apart with a thought. After all, the scene of the hunters and psychokinesis tearing apart the hunters of base C10 was still vivid in their minds. After hesitating for a moment, they finally decided not to disturb Immortal. Immortal was so powerful, but he could hide in the base for more than 10 years. It was obvious that he didn't care about fame, nor did he care about profits. His mentality was just as indifferent, tranquil, and aloof from worldly affairs as his appearance suggested. However, although they didn't disturb him, they still had to do what they had to do. The chief of the base ordered everyone, from today onwards, no one is allowed to go near the corpse farm. Otherwise, they will be punished by military law. The staff officer next to him said carefully, "Chief, if there is no one else near the corpse farm, won't it be too unnatural? This will make him unhappy. I think it's better for everyone to do what they did before. As long as we don't deliberately disturb him, he shouldn't mind, right?" Then, he turned his head and looked at Do Xiaodo. Captain Xiaodo, you used to be his colleague, so you know him better. What do you think? The chief also turned his head and looked at Dou Xiaodo. Dou Xiaodo suddenly felt a lot more pressure on him. Damn it, I'm just a small captain. Why do you have to drag me down with you big shots? And how could I possibly understand him? If I understood him, I would have known that he was a mysterious expert for more than 10 years. However, on the surface, he still thought for a moment before speaking. I feel that he's a person who stands aloof from worldly affairs and is quiet and natural. He's usually very easygoing. As long as you don't provoke him or disturb him, everything else will be fine as usual. The bureau chief and the staff officer nodded. Captain Littlebean is indeed insightful. Hence, the bureau chief immediately ordered, no one is allowed to disturb MO. Mr. MO violators will be dealt with according to military law. Everything else will continue as usual. He really didn't know how to address MO Sure. It was no longer appropriate to call him a mysterious expert. Calling him Lord, Senior, and so on seemed very strange. He could only address him as Mr. Mo. Everyone hurriedly said solemnly, yes, Chief. Mo Sure went straight back to the corpse farm. Happy was feeding pigs in the corpse farm. However, he was somewhat absent-minded. Big Brother Mo had already left for a while. Why hadn't he returned yet? Could there have been an accident? Impossible, Brother Mo is so strong, how could something happen to him? Happy missed Brother Mo. He didn't know if Brother Mo missed him. However, so what if he missed him? Brother Mo is so strong, and I'm just a normal person. I'm also a mute girl who can't even speak. We're not from the same world at all. Sai, not far away, Oldly saw Happy's absent-minded expression and reminded him, Happy, don't be so absent-minded when you're feeding the zombies later. Safety first. Happy turned his head around, smiled brightly and nodded. Oldly mumbled, seriously? Little Mo has been gone for so many days, but he still hasn't returned. As he spoke, he heard footsteps entering the courtyard. He looked up and saw Mo Sure walking in. You're finally back, kid. Ha. Cough, cough, cough. Oldly coughed violently because of his excitement. Happy also quickly put down what he was doing and came out to welcome him. Although she couldn't speak, her face was filled with happiness. Mo Sure could not help but feel warm in his heart. If there were anyone in the entire base who could treat him like family, there were only two people. One was Happy, and the other was Oldly. He took a few steps forward and looked at Happy's happy face. He could not help but reach out and rub her hair until it was messy. Happy lowered her head in happiness. When the three of them met, it was like a family reunion. For the rest of the day, Happy was practically always by Mo Sure's side. It was as if she was unwilling to leave him even a single step. Oldly looked at the two of them and could not help but smile in relief. The next morning, Mo Sure woke up. He looked at the system in his mind and saw that it had completed its upgrade. Upgrade complete. Upgrade reward. 1 drop of Dragon Will Recovery Potion. Upgrade reward. Your personal storage has been upgraded. After upgrading, your personal storage can be opened at any place. At the same time, the storage has been expanded. It can hold 100,000 items. Upgrade reward. 1 piece of Great Dragon Scale Armor. After use, it can block 1 fatal attack. Note, ignores the opponent's level. Upgrade reward, Dragon Breath Pearl, strengthened. It can block the attacks of any level 10 Great Hunter, level 10 Super Mutated Beast, or level 10 Super Mutated Zombie. Mo Sure looked at the rewards and was secretly happy. His strength would increase rapidly, and it wouldn't be long before the enhanced version of the Dragon Breath Pearl would be useless to him. However, he could use it to defend himself. This Great Dragon Scale Armor could ignore the opponent's level defense. It was already very powerful. Let alone a level 10 Great Hunter, even if the opponent was an existence that far surpassed a level 10 Great Hunter, it would still be impossible for them to kill him in one hit. Following that, more notifications appeared in his mind. Upgrade details. 1. The check-in reward system has been upgraded. Check-in reward can be increased by 100 times. There was not much to the upgrade this time. There was only 1 item. However, just this one item allowed Immortal to benefit a lot. Every time the check-in reward could be increased by 100 times. Then the original 100 days to upgrade would only require 10 days. Immortal immediately spoke in his mind. System, select the Titan Dragon Blood Modification Potion and increase it by 100 times. The system quickly replied. Increasing it by 100 times will consume 1 million evolution points. Selecting a reward will consume 100,000 evolution points. This check-in will consume a total of 1 million evolution points. Please confirm if you want to check in. Immortal was already prepared for this. In general, the total evolution points required to check in did not increase by much. However, the time required was reduced to 1/10 of the original amount. In the end, he still profited a lot. He immediately replied in his mind, "Confirm." Chapter 131. Immortal responded in his mind, "Confirm sign-in." Sign-in successful. Sign-in reward, 100 bottles of Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid. The next moment, 100 small bottles appeared in his backpack. He took out all the bottles and poured all the modification liquid into his mouth without caring about anything else. He could clearly feel that the strength of the cells in his body was much stronger than before. The toughness of his blood vessels had also greatly increased. For the next 9 days, Immortal would sign in 100 times the amount of modification liquid every night. Finally, on the 9th night after he returned to the base, there were 73 empty bottles in front of Immortal. On the other side, there were 27 unopened bottles. He could feel that as long as he took another drop of modification liquid, he would be able to level up. He suppressed the excitement in his heart. He opened the bottle cap and swallowed the drop of modification liquid. As soon as the modification liquid entered his mouth, it turned into a hot current that flowed throughout his body. Every cell in his body was being transformed by this heat flow. The strength of his cells was obviously greater, and there was more space in his cells. He could feel that all the modification liquid he had taken these days was to modify his cell strength to the limit. It could allow his cells to withstand more energy. Although until now, his cells were empty and had no energy. But looking at the situation, it seemed that when all the cells were modified, he could inject energy into them. Immortal estimated that when his body could inject energy, he would surpass level 10 Great Hunter and reach a whole new realm. However, he didn't know what realm it was at the moment. 5 minutes later, the burning feeling in his body slowly receded. It was also at this moment that the attribute interface in his mind changed. Frowny face name, Immortal, Level 3 Great Hunter, Level 1 Long Xianxia, Evolution Path, Titan Dragon. Finally, he was a Level 3 Great Hunter. According to the information obtained from the Broodmother's consciousness, the strongest zombie in China was only a Level 3 super mutant zombie. He was now a Level 3 Great Hunter, and with a Level 1 Long Xianxia, Immortal was confident that he could kill it in seconds. Of course, he didn't know how strong the king he saw in the Broodmother's nest was. However, now that the system had been upgraded, his leveling speed had also become much faster. Soon, even if the king was a level 10 super mutated zombie, he would be trampled under his feet. Naturally, the faster he leveled up, the faster his evolution points would be consumed. 1 million per night. In just 9 days, he had spent nearly 10 million. The remaining 90 million would only last for about 80 days. Moreover, if he wanted to level up again, he would need 1 billion evolution points. Instead of waiting for 90 million to be used up and then accumulating 1 billion, it would be better to clear out all the zombies in China while he still had a lot of evolution points. There were more than 1.5 billion zombies in China. Even if they were all normal zombies, he could still obtain 1.5 billion evolution points. Not to mention that there were many mutated zombies and super mutated zombies. Immortal planned to clear out all the zombies in China. While obtaining enough evolution points, it would also give all the humans in China a chance to breathe. Although he was not a saint, he was still a human. If all humans were dead, What was the point of him living alone in the world, facing zombies and mutant beasts all day long? Therefore, in terms of the bigger picture, he would help the humans if he could. However, before that, he had to go to the other 2 dragon ruins to sign in. Although there was still a king in the wilderness, he did not know what level it was. It was not really safe. However, Immortal was confident that with his dragon shadow step speed of 10 kilometers per second, even if he could not defeat it, he could easily run away. Therefore, on the morning of the 10th day after Immortal returned to the base, he planned to leave. Before leaving, he gave the enhanced version of the Dragon Breath Pearl to Happy. The enhanced version of the Dragon Breath Pearl was the same size as the previous one. However, the flame inside was more fiery red. The dragon shadow formed by the flame was also clearer. Happy, keep this pearl with you. Don't leave it at all times. Happy had seen how powerful the Dragon Breath Pearl was last time. He immediately nodded with a happy expression on his face. Brother Emo cares about me. Emo sure took back Happy's original Dragon Breath Pearl and put it into his backpack. Perhaps he would need it in the future. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Emo sure left the base. On the city wall, everyone looked at Emo sure's back as he left, and all of them were silent. After the mysterious powerhouse left, they felt that the pressure on their bodies had increased by a lot. On the second day after Emo sure left, something happened. A mutated zombie came to the entrance of the base. This mutated zombie was 3 meters tall. His face had been torn in many places. There were also many deep wounds on his body that showed his bones. Although these wounds were slowly healing, even after they healed, there would still be many sunken scars left. In his arms was a girl in her 20s. Do Xiaodo, who was guarding the city, could not help but be stunned when he saw the girl's face through the binoculars. Guo Tao saw this and knew that something had happened. He also picked up the binoculars and looked. With one look, he could not help but be stunned. He saw that the mutated zombie was holding Yang Kang's daughter. Then this mutated zombie was Yang Kang, who had been injected with the Super X virus enhancer before. He actually managed to find his daughter and even managed to save her. Looking at the wounds on his body, he must have experienced many cruel battles. He saw that Yang Kang was screaming in pain at this time, running quickly. At the city gate, he put his daughter down. Looking at his daughter lovingly, his originally scarlet eyes revealed a gentle color. He reached out and wanted to hold his daughter's hand. However, when he saw that his hand was no longer a human hand, it was the sharp claws of a mutated zombie. He closed his eyes in pain. He slowly withdrew his hand. His daughter hugged Yang Kang's thick waist. Dad, no matter what you become, I will always be your daughter. In Yang Kang's scarlet eyes, a tear quietly slipped down and dripped on his daughter's head. He squatted down and reached out to hug his daughter. For a long time, he did not want to let go. In his throat, he made a half-human, half-beast sound. I will always be your father. After a long time, he seemed to have made up his mind. He gently pushed his daughter away. Then he faced the city wall and made a half-human, half-beast roar. Kill me, quick, I can't hold on anymore. His daughter's tears seemed to have already dried up. She could only say, Dad, no, don't leave me. On the city wall, Guo Tao's eyes flashed. For a moment, he could not make up his mind. Yang Kang continued to make a half-human, half-beast roar. Guo Tao, quick, kill me. Use your genetic weapon, kick. Chapter 132. With Yang Kang's current strength, normal bullets and rockets wouldn't be able to hurt him. Hearing this, Guo Tao clenched his teeth. He jumped down from the city wall. Although his words and actions were feminine, he was definitely not feminine when it came to doing things. A genetic martial art had already condensed on his right arm. Oh, Uncle Guo, don't do it. You will be fine. Auntie Chen will definitely have a way. She is still waiting for you to go back. I know Auntie Chen likes you. You can live together when you go back. Dad, you must hold on. However, Yang Kang clenched his teeth. He hissed, I know my own situation. Guo Tao, why are you still in a daze? Kill me now. Do you want me to call you Madame Guo? Hearing this, Guizhou Tao shook his head and said in pain, "Captain, don't worry. I will take care of little Yen for you." Before he finished his words, he suddenly went forward and pulled Yang Kang's daughter to the side. At the same time, his genetic martial art instantly pierced Yang Kang's head. It instantly exploded on Yang Kang's head. Yang Kang's huge headless corpse fell to the ground. "Dad?" Yang Kang's daughter let out a heart-wrenching scream. This scream reverberated in the empty wilderness. Guizhou Tao, who was at the side, helplessly retracted his genetic martial art. He felt that his legs were going soft. Even in his dreams, he had never imagined that he would one day kill his former captain with his own hands. The corpse hunters and soldiers on the city wall were all moved by this. However, at this moment, tens of tentacles grew out of Yang Kang's badly mutilated head. These tentacles quickly intertwined like needles and threads, quickly stitching his head together. After the stitching, the head looked even uglier. However, at the next moment, Yang Kang's blood-red eyes suddenly opened. He then opened his mouth and let out a shocking roar. Roar! He immediately pounced on his daughter who was closest to him. In just an instant he pushed his daughter to the ground. He opened his huge mouth and bit his daughter's neck. Yang Kang's daughter's eyes were filled with tears as she shook her head. "Dad?" When Yang Kang heard the word, "Dad," he was stunned. His scarlet eyes seemed to have cleared up a little. However, this clear and turbid gaze was constantly alternating. Yang Kang's last shred of rationality wanted to suppress the bloodthirsty desire in his heart. A moment later, his last shred of rationality finally gained the upper hand. Seeing his daughter beneath him, he was shocked. He hurriedly jumped back 100 meters. Then, he shook his head in pain and used his last bit of reason to suppress the bloodthirsty desire in his heart. He turned around and fled into the wilderness. Since even genetic martial arts couldn't kill him, he could only stay away from his daughter. The further he was away from his daughter, the safer she would be. At this moment, a female voice came from the city gate. "Yang Kang." Yang Kang stopped in his tracks. He turned around to look. Dr. Chen hurried over. In Yang Kang's eyes, clarity and turbidity alternated for a moment, and clarity once again took the upper hand. He didn't turn around and only let out a roar that was closer to that of a beast. "Take good care of little Yen." Then, he didn't dare to stay any longer. He jumped and ran into the wilderness. At the city gate, Dr. Chen hugged little Yen tightly. Both of them couldn't stop their tears from flowing down. 5 days later, Immortal had already arrived at your province. The dragon ruins was not far away. Over the past 5 days, Immortal had killed a lot of monsters along the way. His evolution points were gradually approaching 100 million. However, after arriving here, he didn't directly go to the dragon ruins. He had just arrived and didn't know what the situation was like. Although his dragon will could detect up to 50 kilometers away, the mother nest Sanguisurincus could also detect up to 50 kilometers away. However, he was cautious by nature and naturally wouldn't go to the dragon ruins casually. There was a base more than 200 kilometers to the west of the dragon ruins. Base C10. Immortal planned to go to base C10 first to inquire about the situation at the dragon ruins. However, when he was 200 kilometers away from base C10, he used his dragon will to sweep across. He ran around the base 4 times. He cleared out all the zombies and mutated beasts within 200 kilometers of the base. There were a lot more zombies around base C10 compared to the other bases, and they were also a lot stronger. Normal zombies only accounted for 50% of the zombies. Mutated zombies accounted for 40%, and strong mutated zombies accounted for 10%. Therefore, after Immortal swept through the base 4 times, he obtained a lot more evolution points than before. He had actually reached 150 million. In the evening, Immortal used Dragon Shadow Step to enter base C10 without being discovered by any of the guards. There were more than 100,000 people in base C10, so it was normal for the pedestrians to not know each other. Immortal walked on the road, but no one came to question him. He wandered around base C10 for more than half an hour. Immortal realized that base C10 had a lot more zombie hunters, and psychokinesis than the other bases. Out of 10 people walking on the road, 5 or 6 of them were zombie hunters. Based on this, base C10 should be the strongest among all the bases. However, Immortal could see the despair on everyone's face. He understood after thinking about it. The mutated beasts and zombies around base C10 were also a lot stronger than the other bases. If he didn't clear out those zombies and mutated beasts, it wouldn't be long before the zombies and mutated beasts attacked this place. Immortal planned to find an ordinary person to activate his telekinesis, and then ask about the nearby situation. At this time, a voice came from a faraway alley. "Little bastard, you dare to steal food in the cafeteria, how dare you?" Then, the sound of messy footsteps could be heard. Immortal used his telekinesis to investigate. He saw a boy of about 10 years old with tattered clothes and messy hair running towards him. His 2 dirty hands each held a steamed bun. As he ran, he took a big bite of the steamed bun. Behind him was a middle-aged man wearing a dirty apron who quickly chased after him. The middle-aged man's speed was very fast. He could cross 10 meters in one step. He should be a level 1 zombie hunter. In base C10, even the people who cooked in the cafeteria were zombie hunters. The middle-aged man arrived behind the child in a few steps. He grabbed the child's collar with one hand and lifted him into the air. "Little bastard, the leader of the base has given the order. The base is short of food, now the adults get 2 steamed buns a day, and the children get 1 steamed bun a day. Do you want to die?" As he spoke, he reached out to snatch the steamed bun in the child's hand. The child said vaguely, "The adults get 2 steamed buns a day, why do you get 6? I saw it." As he spoke, he quickly opened his mouth and took a bite of the other steamed bun. The chef saw that the child had taken a bite of both steamed buns, and the steamed buns were full of black claw marks. He couldn't help but be furious. "Damn it, you're so stubborn. I'll slap you to death." As he spoke, he swung his right hand and was about to slap the child's face. However, at this moment, he felt as if a huge invisible hand had suddenly grabbed him. He was thrown far away. He was thrown 70 to 80 meters away and immediately fainted. The child was thrown to the ground and looked back. He saw the unconscious chef 70 to 80 meters away. He couldn't help but be stunned. What the hell? You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.